What if Harry Potter's greatest power wasn't magic, but the survival instincts he learned inside the cupboard? Sorted into Slytherin, Harry must uncover Hogwarts' darkest secrets using observation, patience, and a mind trained never to trust too easily. Like, subscribe, and let's begin.
Chapter 1. What the cupboard taught Harry Potter learned the difference between being quiet and being absent before he learned multiplication. Being quiet meant Uncle Vernon did not lower the newspaper. Being absent meant Aunt Petunia set 3 plates on the kitchen table and did not notice there should have been 4. At 7 years old, Harry had already discovered that absence was safer. He stood beside the cooker on a gray Tuesday morning, holding a piece of toast that had gone cold between his fingers. Dudley was telling his father about a boy he had pushed into the school pond. Uncle Vernon laughed so loudly that the spoons trembled in their drawer. Aunt Petunia reached across the table to straighten Dudley's collar, although it was already straight. Nobody looked at Harry. That was not unusual. What was unusual was that Aunt Petunia had forgotten to tell him to leave. Harry remained where he was, testing the boundaries of the mistake. 1 second, 2, 3. He counted the pale squares of the kitchen floor without moving his head, 4 across from the cooker to the table, 7 from the back door to the hall, 28 altogether, though the one beneath Uncle Vernon's chair was mostly hidden. At 10 seconds, Aunt Petunia finally noticed the shape beside the cooker. Her face tightened. "What are you still doing here?" Harry looked down at his toast. "You didn't say." That was the wrong answer. He knew it as soon as the words left him. Aunt Petunia's lips thinned and Uncle Vernon's newspaper lowered by 2 inches. Not all the way. 2 inches meant irritation. Halfway meant anger. Folded on the table meant Harry should already be moving. Harry put the toast beside the sink. "Sorry," he said. The newspaper stopped descending. It was not forgiveness. Harry knew better than to mistake a danger passing for kindness. He went into the hall, collected the school jumper Dudley had outgrown, and left the house before anyone found another reason to remember him. Number 4, Privet Drive looked like the other houses in the street because Uncle Vernon considered difference a kind of personal insult. The hedges were cut to equal height. The car was washed every Sunday. The brass number on the front door shone brightly enough for people across the road to see that the Dursleys had nothing to hide. Harry knew that having nothing visible to hide was not the same as having nothing hidden. The cupboard beneath the stairs was proof of that. So was the loose floorboard inside it. Harry had discovered the board when he was 6. One corner rose when pressed, not enough to be noticed by an adult, but enough for small fingers to work underneath. He had hidden 3 things there over the years: a blunt pencil, 6 sheets of paper folded twice, and a blue marble Dudley had thrown away because it had a scratch. The papers were the important part. Harry called them the ledger, though he did not know whether that was the proper word. He had heard Uncle Vernon use it while complaining about a man from Grunnings. "The ledger doesn't lie," Uncle Vernon had said. Harry liked that. People lied constantly. Dudley lied when he blamed Harry for broken toys. Aunt Petunia lied when neighbors asked whether Harry received enough to eat. Uncle Vernon lied when he said punishments hurt him more than they hurt Harry, because Uncle Vernon always appeared considerably happier afterward. Schedules did not lie. Patterns did not lie. The ledger began with breakfast. Monday. Father leaves 7:42 if traffic normal. Harry had written Father because Uncle Vernon sometimes searched his things, and Harry had decided that names were dangerous. Names made observations look personal. Roles made them look like homework. Mother hangs washing if weather clear. Back door open 8:10 to 8:25. Sun comes down when second cartoon starts. Harry had not included himself. He did not need to. The ledger was not a diary. Diaries were for thoughts, and thoughts could be used against you. The ledger contained only things that could be checked. Uncle Vernon's newspaper had 4 positions. Aunt Petunia cleaned when anxious and baked when she expected visitors. Dudley became more dangerous when bored than when angry. Footsteps on the second stair from the top caused it to creak. The hall cupboard key remained in Aunt Petunia's apron pocket during the day and beneath the blue vase at night. Uncle Vernon checked locks in the order: back door, windows, front door. Aunt Petunia checked them in the opposite order. If both adults were upset, they sometimes assumed the other had locked the cupboard. That last discovery had given Harry 23 minutes of freedom one evening in February. He had used 16 of them to read a discarded newspaper and 7 to put everything back exactly as he had found it. The ledger kept him from being surprised. Surprise was what happened when you had not paid enough attention. Harry disliked surprise. At school, teachers called him withdrawn. One wrote that he needed to participate more. Another asked whether he had difficulty making friends. Harry had considered the question carefully. Children usually asked about his clothes first. Then they asked why Dudley said he was strange. Then Dudley found out they had spoken to him, and the friendship ended before it properly began. "No," Harry had told the teacher. She had looked puzzled. "No, you don't have difficulty?" "No, I don't think I have friends." The teacher had stared for a moment, then written something on her clipboard. Harry watched the pressure of her pencil. People pressed harder when they were writing something they did not intend to say aloud. After school, he returned to Privet Drive by the longer route because Dudley and his friends waited beside the alley on Tuesdays. Harry had learned that in October. The group changed locations occasionally, but never randomly. Piers Polkiss disliked walking far. Gordon's mother collected him on Thursdays. Malcolm had football practice every second Wednesday. Once their habits were understood, avoiding them became simple, not easy. Simple and easy were different things. The rain began 3 streets from home. Harry pulled the large jumper's sleeves over his hands and kept walking. He could have run, but running attracted attention, and arriving breathless gave Aunt Petunia a reason to ask where he had been. He reached number 4 at 4:12. The car was already in the drive. Harry stopped outside the gate. Uncle Vernon normally returned at 6:19 on Fridays, 6:31, once, during heavy snow, 7:14, never 4:12. An unfamiliar car stood behind Uncle Vernon's. Dark, polished, expensive. Harry looked at the front windows. The curtains were open, but no one stood behind them. A man's laughter came faintly through the wall. Visitors. Aunt Petunia baked for visitors. Harry moved around the side of the house and checked the kitchen window. 2 trays of biscuits rested on the counter. The best tea service was missing from its cabinet. Important visitors. He entered through the back door because it made less noise. Aunt Petunia appeared before he had removed his wet shoes. Her smile was still arranged for company. It looked painful. "You're late." Harry glanced at the clock. He was 3 minutes earlier than usual. "I'm sorry. You are to go directly to your cupboard and remain there until our guests leave. Do you understand?" "Yes," and not a sound. "Yes." She turned away, then paused. "And take those dreadful shoes off. You're dripping everywhere." Harry looked at the floor. There were 2 drops beside his left foot. He wiped them with his sleeve. Aunt Petunia made a disgusted noise and hurried back toward the sitting room, where Uncle Vernon was explaining drill production to someone important enough to deserve the good biscuits. Harry placed his shoes against the wall, opened the cupboard, and went inside. The door shut behind him. Darkness settled. Harry sat on the thin mattress with his knees drawn up. Through the wall he could hear pieces of Uncle Vernon's conversation: expansion, contracts, excellent quarter. Promising partnership. His uncle's voice had a shape for visitors. It became rounder and deeper. He laughed at the ends of other people's sentences, even when they had not said anything amusing. Harry counted the seconds between those laughs. 14, 22, 9, 31. His breathing slowed. The cupboard was small enough that Harry could touch both walls if he stretched his arms. Pipes ran above his head. Coats and cleaning rags hung near his feet. When someone climbed the stairs, dust fell from the underside of the steps. People might have expected him to hate the cupboard. He did, sometimes. He hated the spiders and the smell of polish. He hated waking with a stiff neck. He hated that the door could only be opened from the outside when the bolt was drawn. But hatred required energy, and Harry had learned to spend energy carefully. The cupboard had one advantage. It was predictable. Walls did not change their minds. The ceiling did not shout. Darkness did not pretend it had forgotten him and then become furious when it remembered. When Harry was younger, perhaps 5, though nobody had ever told him the exact date, Uncle Vernon had locked him inside during a summer storm. Dudley had broken a lamp while chasing him. Aunt Petunia had taken Dudley upstairs to soothe him. Uncle Vernon had placed Harry in the cupboard and said he could come out when he learned to behave like a normal boy. Thunder had shaken the house. Harry had been certain the cupboard was shrinking. He had scratched at the door until his fingernails hurt. He had shouted, but the storm swallowed his voice. He had kicked the wood until Uncle Vernon struck the other side and told him another sound would earn another day. Harry had curled on the mattress and waited to disappear. Then he had begun counting, not because he had a plan. Because there were slats in the door, and counting them was something his mind could do while everything else became too large. 12 slats. 4 screws in each hinge. 37 dark marks on the wall. 511 breaths before the thunder moved farther away. When he reached 512, Harry imagined a second cupboard inside the first. This one had no door. No one could open it because no one else knew where it was. There were no spiders, no pipes, and no sound. Its walls were smooth and gray. In the middle stood a wooden chair. Harry sat in it and placed everything he felt outside the walls, fear first, then anger, then the wish for Aunt Petunia to remember that he was her sister's son. That wish had been the most difficult thing to put outside. It kept finding cracks. Years later, Harry still visited the imagined room whenever shouting became too loud or a punishment lasted too long. He did not think of it as magic. Magic belonged to stories, and stories belonged to children whose adults read to them. The room was simply something he had built. The Dursleys could lock the cupboard. They could not enter the room inside it. That afternoon, beneath the stairs, Harry sat in his private chair and listened without listening. The visitors remained for 1 hour and 43 minutes. At 37 minutes, Dudley came down. Harry knew it was Dudley because the steps were heavy and uneven, and because Dudley dragged one hand along the wall when he walked. The cupboard door opened. Light cut across Harry's face. Dudley looked over his shoulder before grinning. "Mum says you have to stay in." Harry said nothing. Dudley disliked silence. Silence forced him to invent his own entertainment, which was rarely good, but speaking usually gave him a better target. Dudley held a biscuit in one hand, a good biscuit with chocolate across one side. "Hungry?" Harry looked at the biscuit instead of Dudley's face. Dudley took a bite. Crumbs fell onto the floor. "Mum made loads. You can't have any." Harry counted the bites. Dudley needed 4 to finish most biscuits. He took 6 because he wanted the performance to last. When it was gone, he licked chocolate from his thumb. "You're not even listening." "I am." "What did I say?" "That I can't have any." Dudley's eyes narrowed. He had wanted anger, not accuracy. He reached for the cupboard light cord and pulled it twice, flashing the bulb on and off. Harry watched his hand. The third pull came harder. The cord snapped. Dudley froze. The small plastic handle struck the floor between them. They both looked at it. From the sitting room came another burst of adult laughter. Dudley's face changed. Harry knew each stage: surprise, calculation, relief. "You broke it," Dudley said. Harry could have argued that Dudley was holding the cord. Arguments were useful only when the other person cared what had happened. "I didn't touch it. You broke it." Dudley glanced toward the sitting room again. "I'm telling." He stepped backward. Harry's stomach tightened. A broken light was not a serious thing, but seriousness had little to do with punishment. Visitors were present. Aunt Petunia was anxious. Uncle Vernon had returned early for business. 3 separate conditions had formed at once. Harry's eyes moved to the plastic handle on the floor. He wished Dudley had not pulled so hard. The handle twitched. Harry stopped breathing. It moved no more than the width of a fingernail, sliding across the floor toward the dangling end of the cord. Dudley did not notice. He was still watching the hole. Harry stared at the handle. Nothing else happened. He thought of the cord as 2 separate facts: broken cord, plastic handle. Facts could sometimes be rearranged, not changed. Rearranged, the handle rolled once. The broken string lifted from the floor. Harry felt a pressure behind his eyes, light and unpleasant, like trying not to sneeze. The frayed ends touched. For an instant, the cord looked whole. Then the pressure vanished. The handle dropped. Hanging from the repaired string, Dudley looked back. His mouth opened. The cord swayed gently between them. "You!" Footsteps approached from the sitting room. Dudley stepped away from the cupboard just as Aunt Petunia entered the hall. "What are you doing down here?" "Nothing," Dudley said immediately. Aunt Petunia's attention moved to Harry, because nothing in the Dursley household remained Dudley's fault while Harry was nearby. Harry looked at the biscuit crumbs. Aunt Petunia followed his gaze. "Dudders, darling, you know we're saving those for the guests." "I only had one." "Of course you did." She smiled, touched his hair, and looked into the cupboard. "And you, stay where you are." Harry nodded. Dudley stared at the repaired cord. Harry lowered his eyes before Aunt Petunia could notice where Dudley was looking. The door closed again. For several seconds, neither boy moved. Then Aunt Petunia guided Dudley toward the sitting room, asking whether he wanted lemonade. Harry waited until the footsteps faded. He lifted the loose floorboard. On a new sheet of paper, he wrote, "Light cord broke. Moved back." Dudley saw. He considered the wording. Then he added, "Do not do again where someone can see." That became the first rule. Other incidents followed, a blue cup sliding back from the edge of a table before it fell, a door remaining unlocked when Aunt Petunia had turned the key, a frying pan cooling quickly enough that Harry did not burn his hand. Small things, quiet things. The strange happenings never arrived when Harry was showing off, because Harry had never learned how to show off. They came when something needed correcting, and no ordinary method remained. He tested them only twice. The first time he placed a pencil on the cupboard floor and tried to make it roll. It did not. The second time he concentrated on opening the loose floorboard without touching it. Nothing happened for 6 minutes. Harry stopped after that. Whatever the strange ability was, it did not obey him simply because he wanted proof. It appeared when his body believed there was danger, and even then it performed the smallest possible correction. Harry understood the logic. Large changes attracted attention. Attention created questions. Questions brought adults. The magic, though he did not yet call it magic, seemed to understand the Dursleys almost as well as he did. By the time Harry was 9, Uncle Vernon no longer used his name at the table. Boy served when angry. You served when irritated. Most days they managed without addressing him at all. Aunt Petunia left written lists on the kitchen counter: wash dishes, weed garden, clean bathroom, stay out of sight. She did not write Harry at the top. There was no need. Dudley would never mistake chores for instructions meant for him. Harry completed each task in order of visibility rather than difficulty. Front garden first, because neighbors could see it. Kitchen second, because Aunt Petunia inspected it most often. Upstairs bathroom last, because Dudley usually occupied it until midday. The ledger expanded. He created symbols for mood, visitors, and risk. A black square meant Uncle Vernon had received bad news from work. A triangle meant Aunt Petunia had spoken to Mrs. Figg and would ask questions about Harry's behavior. 3 short lines meant Dudley's gang had nothing planned. He hid the pages beneath the floorboard and memorized anything important in case they were found. The system was not perfect. No system involving people could be perfect, but it reduced the bad days. It also made the good days easier to identify, though Harry's definition of good had become practical. A good day was one in which nobody shouted. A very good day included enough food. An excellent day provided an hour alone with something to read. Birthdays did not qualify. Dudley's birthday was an annual emergency. It changed the household schedule for a week. Deliveries arrived. Relatives telephoned. Aunt Petunia counted presents repeatedly, and Uncle Vernon grew angry at anyone whose gift seemed insufficiently expensive. Harry's birthday changed nothing. The first few years he had not understood why. At school, children spoke about cakes and candles. Teachers made small paper crowns. Names were written on the board beneath "Happy Birthday." Harry waited. On July 31st, nothing happened. He wondered whether he had remembered the date incorrectly. The following year, he checked a calendar 3 times. Nothing happened again. At 8, he asked Aunt Petunia. She was peeling potatoes. Her knife stopped. "Where did you hear that date?" "School records." For a moment, she looked at him as though he had opened a locked drawer. Then the knife began moving again. "You don't need to concern yourself with such things." "Is it wrong?" She dropped a strip of peel into the bin. No. Harry waited. Aunt Petunia did not say anything else. That evening, he wrote the date in the ledger. July 31, birthday. No change to schedule. He never asked again. The summer before his 11th birthday began with Dudley receiving a new television for no particular reason. The old television was moved into a spare bedroom. Harry watched Uncle Vernon carry it upstairs and tried not to look interested. Interest was dangerous. Interest told people what could be taken away. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Harry was frying bacon when the post fell through the slot. Uncle Vernon continued reading the newspaper. Aunt Petunia continued arranging grapefruit on plates. Dudley continued complaining that his portion was smaller than yesterday's, though it was not. Harry listened to the envelopes slide across the hall floor. 4 pieces, 1 heavy. He finished the bacon and placed it on the table. "Post." Uncle Vernon said. He did not look up. Harry entered the hall. There were bills, a postcard for Aunt Petunia, and a thick yellowish envelope beneath them. Harry bent down. His name was written on the front. Not boy, not you, not even H. Potter. Mr. H. Potter. The address underneath was more unsettling. The cupboard under the stairs. 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Harry stood very still. The house seemed to narrow around him. Someone knew his name. Someone knew where he slept. Neither fact felt entirely like good news. He turned the envelope over. A red wax seal closed the flap. In the center was a large letter H surrounded by 4 animals. "Boy!" Harry brought the post into the kitchen. Uncle Vernon held out one hand. Harry gave him the bills and the postcard. He kept the yellow envelope beneath them. Uncle Vernon noticed. His hand stopped. "What's that?" Harry considered lying. The ledger suggested Uncle Vernon was least observant before his second cup of coffee. He had not yet finished his first. Aunt Petunia, however, was watching Harry's hands. A letter. For whom? Harry looked down at his own name. For me. The kitchen changed. Uncle Vernon snatched the envelope so quickly that it tore Harry's thumbnail. Aunt Petunia saw the writing and turned the color of the sink. Uncle Vernon read the address once, then again. His mustache shook. "Who sent this?" "I don't know." "Don't lie to me." "I haven't opened it." That was accurate, but accuracy did not help. Uncle Vernon tore the envelope in half without reading the contents. He ripped each half again and shoved the pieces beneath the newspaper. "There is no letter," he said. Harry looked at the yellow corners protruding from beneath the sports pages. All right. Uncle Vernon stared at him. Harry had learned that agreeing too quickly could be as dangerous as arguing. "Do you understand?" his uncle demanded. "Yes." "There was no letter." "No." Uncle Vernon's face darkened. Harry corrected himself. "I understand there was no letter." Aunt Petunia dropped a spoon. The sound was small, but Harry saw her hands trembling. That frightened him more than Uncle Vernon's shouting. Aunt Petunia did not tremble when angry. She trembled when afraid. Harry spent that day memorizing the torn fragments he could glimpse whenever the newspaper shifted. A list of books. A term beginning in September. A signature with a long name ending in McGonagall. By evening, the remains had disappeared. The next morning, 3 letters arrived. 1 for Mr. H. Potter in the cupboard under the stairs. 1 for Harry Potter in the cupboard under the stairs. 1 addressed simply to Harry. Uncle Vernon burned all 3. On the 3rd day, 12 arrived. On the 4th, 24. The letters appeared beneath doors, inside grocery deliveries, and between the pages of Uncle Vernon's newspaper. Each was addressed with impossible accuracy. When Uncle Vernon forced Harry into Dudley's second bedroom, the address changed before the next post arrived. Mr. H. Potter. The smallest bedroom, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging. Harry added a page to the ledger. Sender knows rooms. Sender knows when rooms change. Sender does not stop after warning. He underlined the final sentence. Uncle Vernon responded to the letters by abandoning every pattern Harry had recorded. He stopped going to work. He nailed the letterbox shut. He checked windows at random. He moved everyone into a hotel, then out of it before dawn. Harry could no longer predict where breakfast would happen or when Uncle Vernon would sleep. The ledger had become useless in less than a week. Harry should have been terrified. Part of him was. A larger part felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity was too mild a word. Hope was too dangerous. It felt like standing beside a locked door and hearing someone on the other side insist that the lock did not matter. On July 31st, Uncle Vernon took them to a small hut on a rock in the sea. Rain struck the walls. Wind screamed through cracks in the boards. Dudley complained until exhaustion finally silenced him. Aunt Petunia lay stiffly on a lumpy sofa. Uncle Vernon sat in a chair facing the door, a shotgun across his knees. Harry lay on the floor beneath the thinnest blanket. 11 years old, he had no cake, no candles, no presents. The schedule had changed after all. He counted the seconds before midnight. 57, 58, 59. The watch Dudley had discarded months earlier clicked softly beneath Harry's ear. 12 o'clock. Harry waited. Nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. Birthdays were ordinary days. The ledger had established that. Then someone knocked on the door. The entire hut shook. Dudley woke with a squeal. Uncle Vernon stood, lifting the shotgun. Another knock struck the door hard enough to bend it inward. Aunt Petunia made a sound Harry had never heard from her before. "Who's there?" Uncle Vernon shouted. The door flew from its hinges. It landed flat on the floor. A giant filled the doorway. He was twice as tall as any man Harry had seen, and several times as wide. Rain ran from his long hair and tangled beard. His coat seemed to contain enough pockets for an entire household. The giant bent down, lifted the door, and placed it back in the opening as though setting aside a tray. "Couldn't make us a cup of tea, could ye?" he said. "It's not been an easy journey." No one moved. The giant's black eyes crossed the room. They passed over Uncle Vernon, over Aunt Petunia, over Dudley. Then they stopped on Harry, not near him, not through him, on him. The giant smiled. "Harry," he said. Harry's counting stopped. It was the first time he could remember an adult saying his name as though it belonged at the beginning of a sentence rather than the end of an accusation. "Last time I saw you," the giant continued, "you were only a baby." Harry sat up slowly. The cupboard room waited at the back of his mind. Its walls were ready. Its chair was empty. He could retreat there if the giant shouted, if Uncle Vernon raised the gun, if the impossible night became dangerous. But Harry remained where he was. He watched the stranger's hands, open, not clenched. He watched Uncle Vernon's face, anger covering fear. He watched Aunt Petunia, fear covering recognition. The giant reached into his coat and removed a slightly crushed box. "Baked it myself," he said. Words might be a bit crooked. He handed it to Harry. Inside was a chocolate cake with green icing. "Happy birthday, Harry." Harry read the words twice, then a third time. The ledger had been wrong. Or perhaps the ledger had only recorded the rules of one house, and Harry had mistaken those rules for the laws of the entire world. The giant frowned at him. "Ye don't know who I am, do ye?" Harry shook his head. "Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts?" Harry recognized the word from the broken letter. Behind Hagrid, the black sea struck the rocks. Uncle Vernon began speaking, loudly and desperately, but Harry barely heard him. His eyes remained on the cake, on his name, on the evidence that somewhere beyond Privet Drive, someone had written it down and refused to let it be erased. Hagrid looked from Harry to the Dursleys, and the warmth in his face slowly hardened into disbelief. "Ye mean to tell me," he said, "this boy knows nothing?" Aunt Petunia looked away. Uncle Vernon raised the shotgun. Harry counted the movements, one hand around the stock, finger beside the trigger, not on it. Hagrid closer than Uncle Vernon expected, 4 steps between Harry and the door. No clear route past Dudley. The calculations assembled automatically. But beneath them, quieter and stranger than fear, another thought appeared. Someone had come. Not because Harry had predicted him. Not because Harry had made himself useful. Not because the Dursleys had permitted it. Someone had come because Harry was supposed to know something, and the entire world seemed willing to batter down the door until he heard it. Hagrid turned back to him. "Harry," he said carefully, "you're a wizard." For once, Harry Potter had no pattern prepared for what happened next. Chapter 2. Diagon Alley. Read twice. Harry did not believe Hagrid immediately. He believed that Hagrid believed himself. Those were different things. The distinction had saved Harry before. Dudley often believed his own lies by the time an adult arrived to hear them. Aunt Petunia believed anything unpleasant became respectable if described in a quiet enough voice. Uncle Vernon believed volume could turn an opinion into a fact. Hagrid, however, did not look like someone trying to convince himself. He looked offended on Harry's behalf. That was new enough to require caution. "A wizard," Harry repeated. Uncle Vernon made a strangled noise from behind the shotgun. "He is nothing of the sort." Hagrid turned his head. The movement was slow. Uncle Vernon lowered the barrel by several inches without appearing to realize he had done it. Harry noticed that Hagrid was not merely large. Size explained why the floorboards protested beneath him, but it did not explain why Uncle Vernon's courage had begun leaking out of the room. There was confidence in Hagrid's stillness, the kind Harry had seen in teachers who already knew which child had started a fight. "Never wondered how things happened around ye?" Hagrid asked Harry. "Things no one could explain." Harry thought of the light cord, the cup, the frying pan. The locked door that had not remained locked. He had wondered constantly. He had simply never expected an answer that improved his situation. "Yes," he said. Aunt Petunia's face tightened. Hagrid saw it. "You knew." It was not a question. Aunt Petunia folded her arms. "We knew what her kind were like." Harry turned toward her. The room seemed to shift around one word, her. Hagrid's expression darkened. "His mother was your sister." "My sister," Aunt Petunia said, "was abnormal." The cupboard room opened inside Harry's mind. He did not enter it, not yet. He watched Aunt Petunia instead. Her chin had lifted, but her left hand was gripping her right elbow hard enough to whiten the fingers. Her anger was real. So was something beneath it. Not fear, not exactly. Old humiliation, perhaps, the kind that remembered details. Harry had seen something similar when Uncle Vernon spoke about a schoolmate who had become richer than him. The story always began with contempt and ended with a precise description of the man's house. "You told me they died in a car crash," Harry said. Aunt Petunia looked at him. Uncle Vernon answered for her. "They did die in a car crash." Silence. Hagrid's coat rustled as his hands curled. Harry counted 3 breaths before he spoke again. "You said my father was drunk." Aunt Petunia's mouth flattened. Hagrid made a sound deep in his chest. The shotgun bent. Harry saw it happen. Hagrid did not point a wand or speak an incantation. He reached out, seized the barrel, and folded it upward as though it had been made from warm wax. Uncle Vernon let go. The weapon struck the floor. Dudley began to cry. Harry's first thought was that Hagrid was stronger than any person had a right to be. His second was that the strength had not answered the question. "How did they die?" Harry asked. Hagrid's anger left him in a rush. He looked down at Harry and for the first time since arriving seemed uncertain. "There are things," he said slowly, "that ought to be told proper." "Then tell me properly." The words came out sharper than Harry intended. Hagrid stared. Harry lowered his voice. "Please." Hagrid sat on the edge of the sofa. The sofa sank far enough that Aunt Petunia took one alarmed step forward, then thought better of objecting. "Your mum and dad were among the finest witches and wizards of their age," Hagrid said. "Brave, talented, good people." Harry waited. Praise was often what adults used before avoiding the useful part. "They were killed by a dark wizard," Hagrid continued. "Name of Voldemort." The lamp flickered. Aunt Petunia flinched. Uncle Vernon looked toward the walls as though the name might have been overheard by someone standing outside in the storm. Harry filed both reactions away. "Why?" Hagrid's beard shifted as he frowned. "Why what? Why did he kill them?" Hagrid glanced at the Dursleys. Harry followed the glance. They knew more than they had said. That did not mean they knew everything. He was killing lots of people then, Hagrid said. Anyone who stood against him, anyone he thought might stand against him. Your parents did. And me? The question quieted the hut. Hagrid's eyes moved to Harry's forehead. Harry raised one hand to the scar hidden beneath his hair. He tried, Hagrid said. Harry's fingers stopped. The cupboard room appeared again. This time he stepped inside. Grey walls, wooden chair, fear outside, confusion outside. The sudden, unreasonable wish for his mother to be alive went outside last. Harry sat in the chair for 4 breaths, then opened the door and returned. Why didn't it work? No one knows. That answer, at least, sounded honest. Hagrid told him what the magical world believed. That Voldemort had entered the Potter's home, that James Potter had died first, that Lily Potter had died trying to protect her son, that the curse meant for Harry had failed, that Voldemort had vanished. Hagrid's version contained admiration and grief, but very few details. Harry listened for places where the story softened. Adults softened stories around children when they believed the true shape was too sharp. His father had died fighting, his mother had refused to move, the killer had disappeared. Harry had been left with a scar, 4 facts. Everything else was interpretation. Hagrid expected amazement when he explained Hogwarts. Harry gave him questions instead. Who paid for it? What happened if Harry had no money? Why had no one from the school checked on him before now? Did all magical children receive letters by owl? Who had written the address on the envelopes? Hagrid answered some questions with confidence, some with surprise, and one with a long silence. The silence followed the question about why nobody had checked. Dumbledore knew where ye were, Hagrid said at last. That isn't what I asked. Hagrid looked uncomfortable. Harry recognized the expression. Adults wore it when they had discovered a child was asking from the wrong side of a subject. You were protected here. Harry looked around the hut. Rainwater ran down one wall. Dudley was still whimpering. Uncle Vernon's shotgun lay bent on the floor. From what? From people who might have wanted to find ye. They found me. The school did. The school knew the room changed. Hagrid's eyes flicked away. That was an answer, though not the one Harry wanted. Someone had watched closely enough to know where he slept, and not closely enough to care where he slept. Harry decided he would remember that. By morning, he had agreed to go, not because Hagrid had persuaded him. Because the Dursleys were afraid of the magical world, and fear was the most honest recommendation they had ever given anything. Hagrid took Harry to London. The journey itself felt less magical than Harry expected. There were trains, ticket barriers, impatient commuters, and Hagrid becoming stuck in places designed for smaller people. Harry watched the crowd adjust around him. Some stared. Most pretended not to. Hagrid spoke freely once they were away from the Dursleys, too freely, perhaps. He told Harry about the Ministry of Magic, wizarding families, goblins, broomsticks, and a sport played in the air. Each answer created 3 more questions. Harry asked only one of them at a time. He had learned that adults became suspicious when they realized how much a child wanted to know. At a narrow pub hidden between ordinary shops, Hagrid stopped. Harry looked at the sign, the leaky cauldron. People passed on either side without turning their heads. "Can't they see it?" Harry asked. "Muggles don't notice much," Hagrid said cheerfully. Harry looked back at the street. A woman with shopping bags walked past the entrance. Her eyes slid over the door. Harry disagreed with Hagrid's wording. The woman had seen it. She had decided it was not important enough to become part of her day. There was a difference between invisibility and being overlooked. Harry understood that better than most. Inside, the pub smelled of smoke, wet wool, and something cooking in a pot that had probably begun before dawn. Conversations stopped. A man behind the bar stared at Harry, then everyone else stared as well. Harry stopped walking. Attention struck harder when one was unaccustomed to it. At Privet Drive, he had spent years learning how to pass through rooms without disturbing them. Here, the entire room rearranged itself around his presence. A witch gripped his hand. A wizard thanked him. Another touched his shoulder. Names arrived faster than Harry could store them. Doris, Daedalus. Tom, someone had not slept because of him. Someone else had lost relatives and spoke as though Harry had personally avenged them. Harry stood still and let the adults perform their gratitude. He did not correct them. He had been 1 year old. They knew that. The gratitude was not for anything he had chosen. It was for what his survival allowed them to believe about themselves afterward. Hagrid looked pleased. Harry felt cold. At the far end of the room, a pale man in a turban watched him. The man's hand rested beside a cup of tea, not around it, beside it. His fingers were trembling. The tremble stopped when Harry looked directly at him, then it began again. Hagrid led Harry over. "Professor Quirrell," he said, "teaches defense against the dark arts." Quirrell rose too quickly and struck the table with his knee. His stutter arrived before his greeting. "P.P. Potter." "I can't tell you what an honor." Harry accepted the offered hand. Quirrell's palm was cold and dry. The man did not squeeze. His eyes moved at once to Harry's scar. Most people in the pub had done the same. Quirrell was simply better at pretending he had not. "You teach defense?" Harry asked. I do." "What kind?" Quirrell blinked. "Harry," Hagrid said, amused. "Man's only just met ye." Quirrell smiled. It appeared carefully, as though he had selected it from several options. "All kinds," he said. The stutter vanished for those 2 words, then it returned. "See countercurses, defensive theory, dangerous creatures." Harry looked at the turban. It was wrapped too heavily for the warm pub. A faint smell clung to it, not dirt or sweat. Something sharp and sweet had been spread over the cloth. Hagrid asked about it. Quirrell laughed and told a story about a foreign prince and a troublesome creature. The details were colorful, too colorful. People who remembered frightening events usually recalled 1 or 2 things with painful clarity and blurred the rest. Quirrell's story had decorations. The prince's robes, the moon over the palace, the color of the creature's eyes, no explanation for why a turban solved anything. Harry let go of his hand. Quirrell seemed relieved. The moment they entered the courtyard behind the pub, Harry asked Hagrid whether the professor had always stuttered. Hagrid scratched his beard. "Don't think so. Poor bloke had a bad time traveling, never been the same since." "What happened?" "Ran into things he shouldn't." "What things?" Hagrid hesitated. Harry waited. "Vampires, maybe. Ye ask a lot of questions. I haven't had answers before." Hagrid's expression changed. Not pity. Harry disliked pity and recognized it quickly. This was closer to shame on someone else's behalf. "Well," Hagrid said, turning toward the brick wall, "best get ye started proper." He tapped the bricks with a small pink umbrella. Harry watched the sequence, 3 up, 2 across. Tap, the wall opened. Magic did not arrive with thunder. It folded the bricks backward in a widening circle, each piece moving with quiet certainty. Beyond them lay a street crowded with leaning shops, hanging signs, moving displays, and people in robes of every color. Harry did not step forward. He counted the bricks until the arch was complete. Then he checked Hagrid's face. Hagrid looked delighted, not watching for Harry's reaction, sharing it. That made Harry trust the moment slightly more. Diagon Alley was the busiest place Harry had ever seen, and the first in which he understood none of the rules. In ordinary London, clothing announced money but tried not to. Shoes, watches, and fabric did the work quietly. Here, wealth wore silver fastenings and walked with canes despite needing no support. Poverty showed in repaired hems and wands polished more carefully than coats. People moved aside for Hagrid because of his size. They moved aside for certain others because of their names. Harry began sorting what he saw. Robes cut close to the body appeared fashionable. Older families wore crests. Shopkeepers greeted some children before their parents introduced them. Several adults recognized Harry. Those who did reacted in one of 3 ways: open excitement, careful respect, immediate avoidance. Harry found the third group most interesting. Hagrid took him to Gringotts. The goblins at the bank were smaller than Hagrid and far more unsettling. They did not stare at Harry's scar. They stared at documents, keys, and the exact position of Hagrid's hands. Harry liked them immediately, not because they appeared kind. They did not, because their rules were visible. Keys mattered, names mattered, possession mattered. A person who lacked the correct item did not receive what they wanted merely because they shouted. Uncle Vernon would have hated the place. Harry's vault contained more gold than he could count quickly. Hagrid expected him to be pleased. Harry felt suspicion first. Money created choices. It also created adults who wish to make those choices for you. Who controls it? Harry asked. It's yours. That doesn't answer the question. Hagrid frowned. The bank keeps it. Can anyone else remove money? Not without your key. Hagrid held the small key in one huge hand. Harry looked at it until Hagrid understood and passed it over. The metal disappeared into Harry's palm. He closed his fingers. His first possession had been a scratched marble Dudley did not want. His second was a key to a fortune he had not known existed. Both seemed equally dangerous to display. He took enough coins for school supplies, counted them twice, and returned the rest. Hagrid approved of his restraint. Harry did not explain that taking too much at once felt like carrying food openly through Dudley's reach. Far below the bank, Hagrid collected a small wrapped object from another vault. He refused to explain what it was. Harry noted the vault number and did not ask twice. People often revealed more when they believed a question had been abandoned. At Madame Malkin's shop, Harry met a boy with pale hair and expensive robes. The boy was standing on a stool while a witch pinned dark fabric around him. He spoke before asking Harry's name. Hogwarts too? Harry nodded. My father's buying my books. Mother's looking at wands. I'm not allowed to choose mine alone because apparently family history matters. The final words imitated an adult. Harry had heard Dudley do the same with Uncle Vernon's opinions. The pale boy looked Harry over, not cruelly at first. He was assessing. Clothes, shoes, hair, no visible family crest. Do you know what house you'll be in? No. Well, everyone says Slytherin's the best. Who is everyone? The boy paused. My family. Harry looked at him. The boy realized the answer had been weaker than intended. He lifted his chin. Some houses will take anyone. Which ones? Gryffindor? Hufflepuff? Why? The boy's mouth opened, then closed. The witch measuring Harry's sleeve hid a smile. The pale boy noticed and colored. Harry had not meant to embarrass him. He had wanted to know whether the claim had a reason behind it. The boy recovered by changing targets. My father says Hogwarts has gone downhill. They let in people from families who have never had magic before. His tone became polished, rehearsed. Harry recognized the structure. Uncle Vernon used it when describing foreigners, poor people, successful neighbors, or anyone who had inconvenienced him. The sentence pretended to discuss standards while actually discussing who deserved to enter the room. What does your father think should happen to them? Harry asked. The boy blinked. Well, they shouldn't be treated the same as old families. Why not? They don't know anything. Neither do I. The boy stared. Harry realized he had said too much. Before the boy could ask his name, Hagrid appeared outside carrying 2 enormous ice creams and waving through the glass. The pale boy's eyes widened. That man works at Hogwarts? Yes. What does he do? Keeper of keys and grounds. He looks. The boy stopped himself. Harry watched the correction happen. Unusual, he finished. It was the first careful thing he had done. Harry stepped down when Madame Malkin released him from the stool. The pale boy spoke quickly. I'm Draco Malfoy. The name was offered like a credential. Harry, Draco waited. Harry did not add the surname. Something uncertain moved beneath Draco's expression. He had expected recognition, perhaps, or a family name he could place in one of several categories. I'll see you at school, Draco said. It sounded less like a farewell than a decision to revisit unfinished work. Outside, Hagrid handed Harry an ice cream. What ye think of him? He repeats his father. Hagrid laughed. Malfoys do plenty of that. Harry tasted the ice cream carefully, chocolate and raspberry. Cold enough to hurt one tooth. It was the best thing he had ever eaten. He did not say so. Ollivander's was quieter than the other shops. The silence felt occupied. Dust lay on the narrow boxes, but the floor between shelves had been disturbed recently. The man who emerged from the back seemed to know Harry before seeing his face. His eyes went first to the scar, then to Harry's hands. Your mother's wand, Mr. Ollivander said, was excellent for charms. Harry's fingers tightened. People continued giving him pieces of his parents as though each piece ought to comfort him. His mother had been brave. His father had been talented. His mother's wand had suited charms. None of them could tell Harry how Lily Potter took her tea or whether James Potter snored. Legends had survived. People had not. Mr. Ollivander measured Harry with a tape that moved by itself. Harry resisted the urge to catch it when it circled his head. Wands were tried and rejected. One produced red sparks before Harry had properly lifted it. Another broke a vase. A third caused every drawer behind the counter to open at once. Harry disliked the disorder of it. His accidental magic had never behaved so loudly. "Interesting," Ollivander murmured. Harry did not ask what was interesting. The man appeared to enjoy being asked. Eventually, he handed Harry a wand made of holly. The moment Harry closed his fingers around it, warmth moved through his arm, not power, recognition. The wand felt alert. Harry raised it. A stream of gold and red sparks rose from the tip, bright enough to fill the shop. Harry lowered it immediately. The sparks stopped. Mr. Ollivander's smile faded at the edges, very curious. "What is?" "The wand contains a phoenix feather. The phoenix gave one other feather." Harry waited. "The wand containing that feather gave you your scar." Hagrid's breathing changed behind him. Harry looked at the wand. It did not feel warm now. It felt like evidence. "You sold him the wand." Mr. Ollivander did not flinch. "I did." "Did you know what he would become?" "No." "Could you tell he was dangerous?" The wandmaker's pale eyes sharpened. "A wand chooses the wizard. It does not provide a moral character reference." Harry looked at the shelves, thousands of boxes, thousands of choices made without regard for what people might do afterward. "Why would this one choose me?" "I suspect," Ollivander said. "That question may take you a very long time to answer." Harry disliked answers designed to sound wise while remaining empty. He paid for the wand and left. That evening, Hagrid returned him to the Dursleys. The change in Privet Drive was immediate. Uncle Vernon no longer shouted within arm's reach. Aunt Petunia no longer sent Harry to the cupboard without first checking where he had placed his wand. Dudley avoided narrow corridors. Harry did not threaten them. That would have changed the rules too quickly. He stored his school supplies in the smallest bedroom and placed the wand beneath a loose board he pried from the wardrobe. Then he recovered the ledger from the cupboard. He read every old entry. The pages looked smaller than he remembered. Father leaves 7:42. Mother checks bin after lunch. Son lies more when peers present. Those facts remained useful, but they no longer described the whole world. Harry added new pages. Magical world. Fame creates attention, not trust. People fear Voldemort's name even when they claim he is gone. Old families use knowledge as rank. Goblins respect keys and terms. Hagrid answers honestly when he knows. Changes subject when he does not. He paused before writing the next entry. Quirrell, stutter stopped twice. Watched Scar, story about turban too detailed. Hand stopped shaking when observed. Harry considered crossing out the final line. Perhaps Quirrell had simply felt embarrassed. Perhaps Harry had stared too much. Observation was not the same as understanding. The ledger recorded patterns, not verdicts. He left the entry as it was and added, not enough information. The Hogwarts Express departed on the 1st of September. At King's Cross, the Dursleys left Harry beside platforms 9 and 10 after Uncle Vernon laughed at the number printed on his ticket. Harry watched them go. Dudley looked back once, not with affection, with caution. Harry waited until they disappeared, then studied the station. Families moved with purpose. Trunks rolled toward an ordinary barrier. Owls hooted beneath coverings. People in robes concealed by traveling cloaks behaved as though a solid wall were a doorway. Harry followed a red-haired family at a distance. One child vanished through the barrier, then another. Harry counted the interval. 8 seconds. He approached the woman when she was briefly alone. "Excuse me." She turned with a warm expression so immediate that Harry nearly stepped back. "First year?" "Yes." "Platform, 9 3/4. You walk straight at the barrier. Don't slow down." Why not? You'll lose your nerve. Harry looked at the brickwork. Losing his nerve was not his concern. Colliding with a wall in public was. The woman seemed to understand. My children have done it. Look. A red-haired boy pushed his trolley forward and disappeared. Evidence. Harry thanked her. He placed both hands on his trolley and walked. He did not run. The barrier passed through him like cold mist. A scarlet train waited beyond it. Steam rolled across the platform. Parents called instructions through windows. Cats escaped from baskets. Older students shouted greetings. The noise pressed against Harry from every direction. He counted breaths until it became manageable, then he boarded. Most compartments were filling quickly. Harry chose one near the middle with 2 exits, the corridor door and a window large enough to break in an emergency. He stored his trunk, sat beside the window and opened the ledger. A red-haired boy appeared in the doorway several minutes later. Anyone sitting here? No, the boy entered. He was the same one Harry had seen pass through the barrier. I'm Ron, he said. Ron waited. Harry knew what came next. He could avoid it or control it. Potter, he added. Ron stared, not at the scar at first, at Harry's whole face. Then his eyes moved upward. Are you really? Harry almost said no. Yes. Have you got the yes? Harry lifted his hair briefly. Ron leaned forward. Harry let the hair fall. Does it hurt? Sometimes. What's you know who like? I was one. Ron's ears reddened. Right, stupid question. Harry looked at him more carefully. Ron had corrected himself without being forced. That was rare. Before Harry could answer, a girl with a large amount of brown hair appeared at the door. Have either of you seen a toad? No, Harry said. A boy named Neville's lost one. She noticed the wand lying beside Ron. Are you doing magic? Ron looked trapped. A spell, he said. The girl entered without being invited. Ron attempted something involving a yellow rat and words that sounded suspiciously unlike a real spell. Nothing happened. The girl informed him that it had failed, then performed a repair spell on Harry's glasses after asking only half a question. The frames tightened against his nose. Harry removed them at once. What did you do? She blinked. Fix them. You didn't wait for me to agree, I asked. You had already raised the wand. The girl's face changed. I was helping. Helping should still wait. Ron looked between them. The girl drew herself up. Well, they were broken. Harry put the glasses back on. They were better. That did not make him wrong. Thank you, he said. The girl seemed more offended by the thanks than by the criticism. I'm Hermione Granger, Harry Potter. Her eyes widened. Unlike Ron, she looked immediately pleased with herself, as though recognizing him confirmed something she had studied. I've read about you. Harry looked at the corridor behind her. Have you? In 3 books. That seems excessive. Ron snorted. Hermione frowned. I only meant that you're important. I was a baby. Yes, but historically, the train whistle sounded. Hermione remembered the missing toad and left, though not before informing them that they ought to change into robes soon. Ron watched her go. She's a bit much. She was trying to help. You didn't seem grateful? I thanked her. Ron looked uncertain. Harry turned toward the window. The train began moving on the platform. Families walked alongside the carriages, hands pressed to glass. Parents shouted last reminders. Harry searched the crowd once. He did not know why. The Dursleys were gone. Of course they were gone. Ron's family remained until the platform curved away. His mother waved with both hands. Harry looked down at the ledger. He wrote, Ron Weasley asks before entering, stares, then apologizes. Hermione Granger helps without waiting. Knows spells, dislikes being corrected. He stopped. Then he added beneath both names, not enough information. Ron glanced at the page. What are you writing? Things I don't want to forget. About us. Harry closed the book. Ron's expression had shifted. The friendliness remained, but caution had entered beside it. Harry recognized the change because he had caused it many times without understanding how. People disliked being observed when they had not agreed to it. At Privet Drive, observation had kept him safe. On the train, it had made the compartment colder. Harry looked at the closed ledger in his hands. For the first time, he wondered whether a habit could save him in one world and harm him in another. Outside, London gave way to fields. Ahead waited a castle full of people who already knew his name. 4 houses with rules nobody had properly explained, a professor whose fear did not behave consistently, and a hat that would be permitted to look directly inside his mind. Harry pressed one thumb against the edge of the ledger. He had spent 10 years learning how to keep doors closed. At Hogwarts, he suspected the first thing they would ask him to do was open one. Chapter 3. The hat's honest mistake. The boats crossed the Black Lake in silence, broken only by water striking wood. Harry sat at the front of one beside Ron, Hermione, and a round-faced boy named Neville, who had found his toad moments before leaving the train and had nearly lost it again while climbing down the station steps. Hogwarts rose ahead of them. The castle did not look built, it looked accumulated. Towers leaned out of darkness at different angles. Windows burned gold against the cliffs. Bridges connected pieces that seemed to have been designed by people who had never met and would have disagreed violently if they had. Harry counted the visible towers. He reached 11 before the angle changed. Behind him, someone whispered that the castle was enormous. Harry thought enormous was not a useful description. Enormous said how a thing felt. It did not say where the doors were. The boats approached an opening in the cliff. Hagrid called for everyone to lower their heads as they passed beneath a curtain of ivy. The lake carried them through a dark tunnel and into a stone harbor beneath the castle. Harry looked up. The ceiling vanished beyond torchlight. There were chains embedded in the walls, old iron rings, steps worn smooth by generations of shoes. Hogwarts had been bringing children through this entrance for a very long time. That should have been comforting. Instead, Harry wondered how many of those children had arrived frightened and been told that tradition made the fear unnecessary. Tradition did not make anything safe. It only made it repeated. They climbed the steps. Neville stumbled twice. Hermione tried to offer advice the first time, caught Harry looking at her, and changed the advice into a question. "Would you like me to hold the toad?" Neville blinked. "Yes, please." Harry looked away before Hermione noticed he had noticed. At the top of the staircase waited a tall witch in emerald robes. Her face was severe in a way Harry understood at once, not angry, precise. There was a difference. Angry adults moved unpredictably. Precise adults expected rules to be followed and usually told you what those rules were first. The witch introduced herself as Professor McGonagall. She explained the houses: Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, Slytherin. Their house would become something like family, she said. They would sleep together, study together, and earn or lose points together. Harry's attention fixed on the final part: collective reward, collective punishment. That system could produce loyalty. It could also produce excellent reasons to conceal mistakes. He glanced at the other students. Some looked excited, others looked ill. Draco Malfoy stood near the front with the relaxed expression of someone who expected the next room to confirm something he already believed. Ron looked determined not to look nervous. Hermione was moving her lips, perhaps repeating facts. Theodore Nott stood alone beside the wall. Harry did not know his name yet. He noticed him because the boy was the only other first year not watching the doors. He was watching the students, thin, pale, dark-haired. His school robes fitted perfectly but looked as though they had been selected without his involvement. He held himself very straight, and when another child bumped his shoulder, he moved aside without protest or apology. The movement was familiar: make room before someone demanded it. Harry looked away. Professor McGonagall left them in a small chamber to wait. The moment the door closed, the room filled with whispers. "What sort of test is it?" "My brother said there's a troll. Fred said we have to duel. We can't duel. We haven't learned anything." "Maybe that's the point." Harry listened. The same children who had been boasting on the train were suddenly offering rumors as facts. Fear created certainty where none existed. Ron leaned toward him. "Any idea what happens?" "No, you don't look worried." "I don't know enough to choose what to worry about." Ron considered that. "That sounds worse." "It usually is." Hermione, standing near them, turned. "I read that the sorting is a very important ceremony, but none of the books explain the method." "Then they left it out on purpose," Harry said. "Why would they do that?" to stop people preparing. Hermione frowned. Preparing wouldn't necessarily be dishonest. Depends what they're measuring. The chamber door opened before she could answer. Professor McGonagall led them into the great hall. Harry stopped beneath the doorway. The room was brighter than daylight. Thousands of candles floated overhead. 4 long tables stretched across the hall, filled with older students. At the far end, teachers sat beneath banners and carved stone. Above them, all was not a ceiling, but a night sky. Harry looked for rafters. There were none. He knew it was magic. Hermione whispered that it was enchanted to resemble the sky outside. Harry still looked for the edges. Things that appeared limitless usually had edges someone did not want noticed. The first years formed a line before the staff table. An old hat sat on a wooden stool. Harry looked at Ron. Ron looked back with an expression that said his brothers were going to suffer. The hat began to sing. Harry listened to the words rather than the tune. The song described each house through virtues: courage, loyalty, intelligence, ambition. It presented the categories as though people possessed one quality strongly enough to make the others secondary. Harry did not believe that. Uncle Vernon was ambitious. Aunt Petunia was loyal. Dudley could be brave when standing behind 3 friends. Qualities were not goodness. They were tools. The hat finished. Applause filled the hall. Professor McGonagall unrolled a list. Names were called. Students approached, sat on the stool, and disappeared beneath the hat's brim. Some decisions took seconds. Others took longer. The tables reacted loudly each time. Harry began recording patterns. Children with known surnames produced expectation before the decision. The Malfoy name caused movement at the Slytherin table before Draco sat down. Slytherin? The hat shouted almost immediately. Draco smiled as though a contract had been honored. The pale boy from beside the wall was called next. Not Theodore. Theodore walked forward. The Slytherin table quieted, not completely. Enough. Harry saw an older student lean toward another and whisper. The hat touched Theodore's head. 3 seconds. 4, 5, Slytherin. Theodore removed the hat, returned it carefully to the stool, and walked to his table without smiling. A prefect shook his hand. Theodore accepted the greeting with the same expression he had worn beside the wall. Harry looked toward the staff table. Professor Snape was watching Theodore. The glance lasted only a moment. Then Snape's eyes shifted back to the line and found Harry. Harry knew the professor before anyone named him. Dark robes, sallow face, black eyes. The man's attention had weight. It did not wander over Harry the way the pub patrons had. Snape looked as if he were comparing Harry to an answer already written down and disliking the differences. Harry met his gaze. Snape's expression sharpened. Harry looked away first, not from fear. Because staring contests were poor sources of information once both people knew they were happening. More names were called. Hermione went to Gryffindor. Neville followed after a long wait and nearly carried the hat back to the table with him. Then Professor McGonagall said, "Potter, Harry." The hall changed. It did not become silent at once. Silence moved outward. The nearest student stopped speaking first, then the next. By the time Harry reached the stool, hundreds of eyes had turned toward him. He counted 4 steps from the line, 3 more to the stool. Sit, hands on knees, do not grip the wood. The hat dropped over his eyes. Darkness covered the hall. For half a breath, it felt like the cupboard. Then a voice spoke inside his head. Well. Harry did not move. The voice was not heard through his ears. It existed behind his thoughts, close enough to make distance meaningless, interesting. Harry imagined the cupboard room immediately. Gray walls rose. The chair appeared. He stepped inside and shut the door. The voice followed him, not through the door. It was already waiting in the chair. Harry stopped. The sorting hat seemed amused. Oh, this is unusual. Get out! The thought came without words, but the hat understood. I'm afraid that would make my task rather difficult. You're in my head. Yes, you didn't ask. No, they rarely mention that part. The hat's voice was old and dry, not apologetic. Harry pictured a second door behind himself. The hat noticed. You built this. Harry did not answer. Not magic. Not properly. A habit given architecture. The grey walls changed. For one terrible moment, the room was no longer empty. Uncle Vernon's shouting pressed against one wall. Aunt Petunia's turned face appeared in another. Dudley's laughter came from the ceiling. Harry pushed them out. The room cleared. The hat became quiet, very disciplined. Harry disliked the approval. It sounded too much like someone admiring a lock without asking why the door needed one. Can you see everything? Not everything. What can't you see? What you have never admitted to yourself. Harry considered that. The hat laughed softly. You are trying to discover my limits while I sort you. Yes. Most children ask where I intend to put them. Do they get a choice? Sometimes. Then it isn't sorting. The hat paused. No, it's negotiation. The amusement disappeared. The hat looked more closely. Harry felt it move through memories, not opening them so much as touching their shapes. The cupboard, the ledger, the kitchen floor, the broken light cord, Diagon Alley, Quirrell's hand ceasing to shake, Ron's embarrassment, Hermione's correction. Draco repeating his father. Harry tried to close the room tighter. The walls held. The hat did not force them. That restraint made Harry slightly less afraid. You are not what they expect, the hat said. Who? Almost everyone. That doesn't answer the question. No, it does not. Images flickered. A long table filled with red and gold, Ron making space on a bench, Hermione lifting her hand in class, a tower bright with fire. Gryffindor would welcome you. Why? They value courage. I'm not brave. The hat made a thoughtful sound. You crossed a barrier you believed might be solid. I watched someone else do it first. You entered a world your guardians feared. They lied about it. That made it worth checking. You faced a half-giant holding a broken door. He brought cake. The hat laughed again. The image changed. A table dressed in blue and bronze, books, windows, questions answered by more questions. Ravenclaw would sharpen you. I'm behind in knowledge, not in mind. Harry did not trust the distinction. Knowledge mattered. A clever child who did not know the rules could still be injured by them. The scene shifted again. Yellow and black, warm kitchens, open faces, hands offered without examination. Hufflepuff might teach you trust. Harry recoiled before he could stop himself. The hat noticed. Do not put me somewhere because I'm missing something. Why not? Because they shouldn't have to repair me. The words existed in the room before Harry understood he had thought them. Silence followed, not the hall's silence. The hat's. When it spoke again, its voice was gentler. No child arrives whole. Harry's hands tightened on his knees outside the mental room. He could feel the stool beneath him, distant and real. Where do you want to go? The hat asked. Harry considered the houses as he had considered the street in Diagon Alley, not by reputation, by visible rules. Gryffindor rewarded action. Ravenclaw rewarded knowledge. Hufflepuff rewarded participation. Slytherin. The room darkened green, stone walls appeared. A place beneath the lake. Closed doors. Whispers. A table where surnames mattered before personalities. Draco's certainty. Theodore's stillness. Professor Snape's measuring gaze. Slytherin would understand your methods, the hat said. Methods? You observe before acting. You conceal weakness. You prefer leverage to confrontation. You protect what is yours quietly. I don't have anything. Not yet. Harry saw the loose floorboard. The ledger, his wand hidden in the wardrobe, his name written in green icing, small possessions, carefully guarded. You have no hunger for glory, the hat continued. Little interest in command. You do not dream of greatness. Then why Slytherin? Because ambition is only one form of self-preservation extended into the future. Harry did not understand. The hat showed him. A child wanting power because power might prevent helplessness. A family wanting status because status might prevent dismissal. A frightened person wanting influence because influence might prevent being forgotten. Not all ambition began with greed. Some began with never wanting to be trapped again. You built a room no one else could enter, the hat said. You built records to predict those around you. You turned invisibility into protection. Tell me, Harry Potter, what do you believe cunning is? Knowing what people will do before they do it. And resourcefulness, using what is available. And determination, continuing when stopping is worse. The hat's presence settled around him. Not bravery, no, not intelligence, those too. But not first. Harry looked at the chair. The hat still occupied it. You've already decided. I have. Then why are we still speaking? Because you have not. Harry thought of Ron. He had asked before entering. He had stared and apologized. Hermione had known spells and offered help before permission. Draco understood rules Harry did not, but his thoughts appeared to belong to his father. Theodore Nott had stood alone and watched everyone. Slytherin's table waited in the darkness of the hat's mind. Harry could feel the hall's expectation outside. Most of them expected Gryffindor. Some expected a story. A famous child placed where famous children belonged. Harry did not want to become a story other people understood. He wanted information. Slytherin possessed information that frightened the Dursleys, disturbed Hagrid, and changed the way names were spoken. It might be dangerous, so was ignorance. Put me where people hide things, Harry thought. The hat's voice became almost solemn. All houses hide things. Then put me where they admit it. The hat withdrew from the chair. The cupboard room was empty again. You may regret this. Will another house be safer? No, then regret isn't useful, the hat sighed. An honest mistake, perhaps. What is? Believing a house reveals what a child is? The darkness lifted slightly. A house reveals what a child believes they must become. Before Harry could answer, the hat shouted to the hall. Slytherin, the word struck the room. For 1 second, no table reacted. Then the Slytherin table erupted, not as loudly as Gryffindor had for Ron. Not warmly, but loudly enough. Harry removed the hat. The great hall had divided into expressions: shock at Gryffindor, satisfaction at Slytherin, interest at Ravenclaw, confusion at Hufflepuff. Ron looked as if someone had changed the ending of a story he had already heard. Hermione's mouth was slightly open. Draco was grinning. Professor McGonagall had become more severe, which Harry had not thought possible. Dumbledore watched him over steepled fingers. Snape did not look surprised. That was the most interesting reaction in the room. Harry returned the hat to the stool and walked toward the Slytherin table. The applause changed as he approached. Some students struck the table with their palms. Others whispered behind their hands. Draco moved to make space beside him. A prefect moved faster. Here, Potter. The older boy pointed to a place between himself and Theodore Nott. The choice was deliberate. Harry sat. The prefect offered his hand. Marcus Flint. Harry shook it. Flint's grip was hard enough to be a test. Harry did not squeeze back. He waited. Flint released him first. Welcome to Slytherin. Thank you. Did you ask for it? The question was quiet. Several nearby students stopped, pretending not to listen. Harry looked at Flint. Would the answer change whether I belong here? Flint's mouth curved. Maybe. Then I'd rather watch first. Theodore turned his head only slightly. Flint laughed once. Careful answer. Was it a dangerous question? In Slytherin, every question is dangerous if enough people hear the answer. Harry looked along the table. Older students had resumed speaking, but their attention still leaned toward him. He understood the warning. Flint had offered it as both kindness and demonstration. The rest of the sorting continued. Harry recognized few names. When the final student joined a table, food appeared. The empty dishes filled so suddenly that Harry's hand moved toward his wand before he stopped it. Roast meat, potatoes, vegetables, bread, more food than the Dursleys bought for Christmas. Conversation rose around him. Draco leaned across Theodore. My father said Potter would be in Slytherin. Harry looked at him. Did he? He said anyone who survived the Dark Lord had to have power. The name was avoided again. Not Voldemort, the Dark Lord. Harry noticed that Slytherins did not flinch when Draco said the title. Some became attentive. What power? Harry asked. Draco hesitated. No one knows. Then your father didn't know why I'd be sorted here. Draco's smile tightened. He knows a great deal, I'm sure. The words were polite. Draco heard the doubt anyway. Across the table, a girl named Pansy Parkinson laughed. Draco's ears reddened. Harry served himself potatoes. He took 3, then added a 4th. Food had always required calculation. How much could be taken without Dudley noticing? How quickly could it be eaten before Aunt Petunia changed her mind? Which scraps would survive overnight? Here, dishes refilled. He watched an older student take the final bread roll from a plate. Another appeared. Harry stared. Theodore noticed. "It doesn't run out during meals," he said. His voice was quiet and flat. "Where does it come from?" "Kitchens." "Who cooks it?" Theodore looked at him as though the question had not occurred to him. "House elves." "What are those?" Draco answered. "Servants." Theodore's eyes remained on Harry. "Magical creatures bound to old houses and institutions." The second answer contained more information. Harry looked at Theodore. "Thank you." Theodore nodded once. Harry ate slowly. The food was too rich. His stomach, accustomed to smaller portions, objected after half a plate. He stopped before discomfort became visible. A ghost drifted through the table. Several first years cried out. Harry leaned back before the translucent body reached him. The ghost wore robes stained silver with something that resembled blood. He greeted the table and introduced himself as the Bloody Baron. Harry examined the stains. If they were the cause of the name, they had remained after death. That suggested ghosts preserved either the appearance or the identity of their final moments. He had questions. The Baron looked directly at him. Harry decided they could wait. At the staff table, Hagrid raised a cup. Harry returned the gesture. Professor Quirrell sat several seats away, speaking to another teacher. His turban appeared darker in the candlelight. His stutter was visible even when Harry could not hear it, shoulders tightening, head dipping, mouth struggling before each phrase. Professor Snape said something to him. Quirrell answered. For 3 seconds, his posture became perfectly still. Then the stutter returned. Harry looked down at his plate. Not enough information. After dessert, Dumbledore stood and gave warnings. The Forbidden Forest was forbidden. Certain corridors were forbidden. Magic in corridors was forbidden. The third-floor corridor on the right-hand side was forbidden to anyone who did not wish to die painfully. Laughter followed. Harry did not laugh. Theodore did not either. Dumbledore smiled as though he had made a joke. Harry looked at the teachers. McGonagall appeared disapproving. Snape appeared bored. Quirrell lowered his eyes. Hagrid scratched his beard. A death threat delivered to children on their first night had produced no alarm among the adults. That meant one of 3 things. Dumbledore was exaggerating. The danger was controlled. Or the institution considered warning sufficient protection. Harry had experience with adults who considered warning sufficient. The feast ended with a school song performed to several tunes at once. Harry watched Dumbledore conduct the noise with visible pleasure. It was the first thing about the headmaster that made him seem less like a portrait and more like a person. The Slytherin first years followed their prefects from the hall. Marcus Flint led the boys. A girl named Gemma Farley led the girls. They descended, then descended again. The castle changed as they moved lower. Warm stone became cold. Windows narrowed, then disappeared. Torches burned blue-green. Harry memorized turns. Left at the statue, missing one hand, down 2 flights. Right beside the tapestry of a ship, straight until the corridor dipped, Flint noticed. "You won't find the common room by wandering. I'm learning the route." "The route changes." Harry looked at him. Flint smiled. "Some staircases, some doors. The castle likes making fools of people." "Does the route to Slytherin change?" "Not often." That meant yes. They stopped before a blank stone wall. "Password?" Flint asked. The students waited. "Pure blood," Draco said confidently. Several older students laughed. Flint shook his head. "Passwords change every 2 weeks. Sometimes more. Never guess them aloud in a corridor." Draco's face stiffened. Flint turned to the wall. "Caput Draconis." The stone opened. Harry filed away the lesson. Knowledge was status here, but displaying false knowledge lowered it. The Slytherin common room stretched beneath the lake. Long windows looked into dark green water. Shadows moved beyond the glass. Silver lamps hung from carved ceilings. Leather chairs surrounded a low fire that provided light without much heat. It was beautiful, not welcoming. The difference seemed intentional. Older students arranged themselves in groups that had clearly existed before the first years arrived. No one said where to stand. Harry waited beside Theodore. Draco moved toward 2 larger boys from the train, Crabbe and Goyle. They had been sorted into Slytherin with little delay and now stood half a step behind him. Flint climbed onto the edge of a table. First years. The room quieted. You know what the other houses say about us. Several students smirked. Harry did not. They say Slytherins cheat, Flint continued. They say we lie. They say every dark wizard came from this house. Not everyone, an older girl called. Laughter followed. Flint smiled. What they mean is that they're frightened of people who understand consequences. Harry listened carefully. This house protects its own, Flint said. That does not mean we like each other. It means problems stay inside these walls until we decide otherwise. You embarrass yourself, that is your concern. You embarrass Slytherin, it becomes ours. Collective punishment, exactly as Harry had expected. House points matter, Flint continued. Reputation matters more. If a professor asks what happens in these rooms, nothing happens in these rooms. Professor Snape stood in the entrance. No one had seen him arrive. Flint stepped down immediately. Snape looked across the gathered students. His gaze reached Harry and stayed there. Mr. Flint's interpretation, Snape said softly, is theatrical but not entirely incorrect. Nobody laughed. Snape entered the room. He moved without wasted motion. His robes followed like smoke, but the effect came from fabric and pace, not magic. You have been sorted into a house burdened by the errors of those who came before you, he said. Some of you will spend 7 years attempting to trade on your surnames. You will discover that I am not impressed by names. His eyes moved to Draco, then Harry. Some of you will find that other students have decided who you are before you speak. Correcting them is rarely worth the effort. Surpassing them is. Harry disliked the word surpassing. It implied a competition whose rules had not been explained. Within my house, Snape continued, discipline will be rewarded, carelessness will not. I do not expect friendship, I expect discretion. His gaze settled on Harry again. There was something personal in it, not warmth, not yet hatred either, recognition of some kind followed by resistance. Harry had seen Aunt Petunia look at him that way when a movement reminded her of Lily. Snape turned to leave. At the doorway, he paused. Mr. Potter? Every face in the room turned. Harry stood because the title sounded like a summons. Yes, Professor. Snape examined him. Harry waited for a question about fame, his father, or the sorting. Instead, Snape said, Your wand is visible. Harry looked down. The tip of the holly wand protruded from his pocket. He moved it deeper. Thank you. A wand carried carelessly is a wand surrendered willingly. Snape left. Conversation began again, quieter than before. Draco approached Harry. Professor, Snape likes me. Harry looked toward the empty doorway. He corrected me. He doesn't bother correcting people he thinks are hopeless. That might have been useful. It might also have been something Draco's father told him. Harry stored it without deciding. The boys were directed toward their dormitory. 5 beds stood beneath green hangings. Trunks had already been placed at their feet. Names appeared on small silver plaques. Harry Potter, Theodore Nott, Draco Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, Gregory Goyle. Draco began speaking at once. My father requested a private room, but Hogwarts doesn't allow them for first years. Why did he request one? Theodore asked. Draco looked surprised that Theodore had spoken. Our family has standards. Theodore removed his robe. Then sharing should be educational. Crabbe laughed. Draco did not. Harry sat on his bed. The mattress shifted beneath him, soft, too soft at first. He pressed one hand against it, checking for springs, gaps, anything hidden. The hangings enclosed the bed completely when drawn. A small table stood beside it. The trunk had a lock, a room inside a room, not unlike the cupboard, except this door closed from Harry's side. The others prepared for sleep. Draco described his family's manner. Crabbe described dinner. Goyle said almost nothing. Theodore folded each item of clothing before placing it away, not carefully, exactly. The sleeves aligned. The seams faced inward. The robe lay flat enough to pass inspection. Harry recognized the behavior. Aunt Petunia had once made him refold towels for an hour because one edge showed. Who checks? Harry asked quietly. Theodore's hands stopped. Across the room, Draco continued talking. What? Your clothes. Theodore looked at the folded robe. No one. Harry waited. Theodore resumed folding. My father dislikes disorder. So does my aunt. Theodore's eyes lifted. It was the first time his expression changed, not sympathy, recognition. Does she inspect your trunk? She inspected everything. Theodore glanced at Harry's worn clothes, then at the locked trunk. Did she choose those? They belonged to my cousin. Theodore looked away quickly. People looked away from injuries when they were too polite to stare or too familiar with the shape. My father chooses mine, he said. The robes were expensive, perfectly fitted. Harry understood that neglect could wear clean fabric. Draco's voice rose from the other side of the room. You two whispering already? Theodore was telling me about house rules, Harry said. The lie came easily because it was close to the truth. Draco seemed annoyed that Theodore knew something he did not. What rules? Theodore answered without hesitation. Flint said not to discuss house matters outside. Draco looked toward the door, then lowered his voice. Harry watched Theodore. The boy finished folding and placed the robe in his trunk. A small purple bruise marked the inside of his wrist. Finger-shaped, Theodore noticed Harry looking and pulled down his sleeve. Harry said nothing. That was the first kindness he offered him. Later, the lamps dimmed. Water shifted beyond the windows. Something enormous passed through the lake, blocking the green light for several seconds. Crabs snored. Draco turned twice before settling. Goyle fell asleep almost immediately. Harry lay behind closed hangings. He counted the sounds. 5 breaths from the bed to his left. 7 from the right. Water against glass every 11 seconds. Then 9, then 12. Pipes inside the walls, distant movement in the common room, no cupboard door, no lock turning outside. His wand rested beneath the pillow. The ledger lay inside the bedside drawer. Harry opened it. By the faint silver light he wrote, Slytherin, questions or tests. False knowledge is worse than silence. House protects reputation before people. Snape values discipline. Possibly, Flint warns before punishing. Draco expects names to explain people. Theodore not watches rooms, folds clothes for inspection even when no one checks, does not ask questions he cannot take back. Harry stopped. Theodore's bruise did not belong in the ledger, not yet. He added, not enough information. Then he turned to a fresh page. The hat had said a house revealed what a child believed they must become. Harry did not know whether that was wisdom or an excuse invented by an old object that had been making irreversible decisions for centuries. He wrote, sorting hat entered cupboard room. Could not open everything. Chose Slytherin because the sentence remained unfinished, because I notice things, because I hide, because I wanted to go where people admitted they were hiding too. None of the answers looked right on paper. Harry closed the ledger. Across the dormitory, Theodore spoke from behind his own curtains. You count. Harry went still. Draco's breathing remained slow. Crabbe snored. Goyle shifted. Harry answered quietly. What? On the boat, at dinner, just now. Theodore's voice contained no accusation. Harry looked at the dark fabric around his bed. How did you know? My mother used to. Harry noticed the tents. What did she count? Doors, windows, steps. Why a pause? She said rooms behaved better when measured. Harry understood at once, not the reason, the sentence. What happened to her? The silence lengthened. Harry expected Theodore not to answer. She died. I'm sorry. People say that when they don't know what else to say. Yes. Another pause. Thank you for saying it anyway. Harry lay back. The bed was warm. The castle was full of strangers who knew his name. A professor who watched him like an old grievance, a headmaster who joked about painful death, and a house that treated every conversation as a negotiation. He should have felt trapped. Instead, he felt the shape of a new kind of alone. At Privet Drive, being alone meant nobody would come. At Hogwarts, it meant people were present on the other side of the curtains, each behind walls of their own. Harry looked toward the closed green fabric. For the first time, he understood that privacy and isolation were not the same thing. Theodore's breathing steadied. Harry counted until he was certain the other boy had fallen asleep. Then he let the cupboard room appear. The gray walls rose, the wooden chair waited, but the room had changed. A second chair stood opposite the first. Harry stared at it. He had not placed it there. For several seconds, he considered removing it. Instead, he left it empty. Outside, deep beneath the lake, something scraped slowly across the glass. Harry counted the seconds until it passed. Then he slept. Chapter 4. Table manners. Harry learned within the first week that Slytherin House had 2 sets of rules. The first set was spoken. Do not lose points carelessly. Do not reveal house matters to outsiders. Do not embarrass Professor Snape. Do not enter another student's trunk. Do not borrow a wand without permission. The second set was demonstrated. Sit in the wrong place at breakfast, and someone would explain why it had never belonged to you. Answer too quickly in class, and older students called it showing off. Answer too slowly, and they called it weakness. Accept help, and you owed something. Refuse help, and you implied the offer had been beneath you. Harry understood the second set better. The Dursleys had never written down their important rules either. He began with the breakfast table. Students did not sit wherever space was available. The table had invisible borders. 7th years occupied the seats nearest the staff table, where professors could see them behaving well. 6th years sat behind them and spoke about examinations as though fear of failure were a mark of maturity. Quidditch players gathered toward the center. Their place shifted depending on who had won the most recent match, but Marcus Flint always sat where he could see the entrance. First years were placed near the end, though not all first years equally. Draco sat closer to the center than Theodore. Crabbe and Goyle sat beside Draco. Pansy Parkinson sat opposite them, beside Millicent Bulstrode and Daphne Greengrass. Harry's place changed every morning. At first, he assumed this was because no one knew where to put him. By the 4th day, he realized Flint was moving him deliberately, beside older students one morning, near Draco the next, at the very end on Friday. Harry responded by arriving at different times and recording who made room. Draco always did when other people were watching. Theodore did when no one was. Flint never moved himself, but once ordered a 3rd year to shift. A 5th year named Cassius Warrington ignored Harry completely until he learned Harry had spoken privately with Hagrid. After that, Warrington asked several casual questions about the Forbidden Forest. Harry answered none of them clearly. The ledger gained a new page. House positions. Flint, formal authority. Expects to be obeyed. Farley, quieter authority. Noticed by girls before boys. Warrington wants information about staff. Draco, status comes from family. Generous when observed. Theodore, status unclear. People recognize name but do not approach. Harry created symbols beside each name. A crown meant authority. A key meant useful information. An eye meant someone who watched. A closed hand meant someone who expected repayment. He did not assign symbols to friends. The ledger had no symbol for friends. On the first Monday of term, a folded note appeared beside Harry's plate. No one likes being written down. The handwriting was narrow and slanted. Harry did not look around. He ate half a piece of toast, drank his tea, and waited for the person responsible to become impatient. Nobody did. After breakfast, he unfolded the note again beneath the table. The paper had been torn from a book margin. There was a faint green stain on one edge. The writer had used a quill with a split nib. 3 students at the table had ink stains on their fingers. One was green. Harry folded the note and placed it inside the ledger. He added, "Someone knows about book." That afternoon, Theodore sat beside him in History of Magic. Professor Binns entered through the blackboard and began speaking without acknowledging that half the class had screamed. Harry stared at the ghost. Binns continued his lecture in a flat voice that made goblin rebellions sound like weather reports. Theodore opened his textbook. A thin green line marked the edge of his right thumb. Harry looked at it. Theodore did not look back. "Your warning," Harry whispered. "No, you know about the ledger. You write in it at meals, so does everyone else. Not about the people sitting beside them." Harry watched Professor Binns drift through his own desk. Was the warning accurate? Yes. Then why deny writing it? Because I didn't, Harry believed him, not because Theodore sounded sincere. Because he had no reason to deny a useful warning after admitting the same opinion. Harry turned a page in his notes. Who did? Theodore's quill continued moving. Someone who wanted you to look at ink stains. Harry stopped. Theodore finally glanced at him. 3 people used green ink at breakfast. 4, Harry said. You had it on your thumb. I did. You wanted me to suspect you. I wanted to see whether you would ask before deciding. Harry looked at the neat lines of Theodore's notes. You could have told me. Then I wouldn't know. Theodore's voice remained quiet. Harry felt irritation, followed almost immediately by recognition. It was exactly the sort of test Harry might have designed. Who wrote it? Daphne. Why? She thinks you're writing weaknesses. I'm writing patterns. In Slytherin, those are often the same thing. At the next table, Hermione raised her hand to correct Professor Binns on a date. Binns continued speaking until she lowered it. Harry looked toward Daphne Greengrass. She sat 2 seats away, staring at the professor with an expression of perfect boredom. Her quill had a clean nib. Harry added nothing to the ledger. That evening he removed it from the common room entirely. He hid it beneath a loose stone in an unused alcove near the dormitory stairs. The stone was not as secure as the floorboard at Privet Drive, but Harry placed a strand of his own hair across the crack. If the stone moved, the hair would fall. The next morning, the hair remained. The second morning, it did not. Harry did not open the hiding place. He went to breakfast as usual. Daphne watched him twice. Theodore watched her watching. Harry waited 3 days before checking. The ledger remained inside. Nothing had been added. Nothing had been removed. Someone had wanted him to know the hiding place was no longer secret. Harry moved it again. This time he did not tell Theodore. Potions was held in the dungeons. The classroom smelled of damp stone, smoke, and ingredients Harry could not yet identify. Glass jars lined the walls. Shapes floated in cloudy liquids. Ron looked ill when he saw them. Hermione looked interested. Draco looked comfortable. Snape entered after the students had settled. Conversation stopped before he reached the front. Harry understood immediately why the professor had become head of Slytherin. Snape did not demand attention. He behaved as though attention had already been given, and any failure to provide it was evidence against the student. He took attendance. When he reached Harry's name, he paused. Harry Potter. Yes, Professor, the black eyes lifted. So, the word traveled across the room, our new celebrity. Several Slytherins glanced at Harry. Draco smiled. Students from Gryffindor turned openly. Harry kept his hands still on the desk. Snape's expression tightened as though Harry had failed to perform a reaction expected of him. Tell me, Potter, what would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood? Harry searched his memory. The question had not appeared in the assigned introductory chapter. I don't know. Hermione's hand rose. Snape ignored her. Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar? I don't know. What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane? I don't know. Hermione's hand climbed higher with each question. Snape's mouth curved without warmth. Fame, it appears, is not a substitute for preparation. Harry looked at him. Was that material assigned? The room became very still. Ron made a choking sound. Draco's smile disappeared. Snape moved closer. No. Then I was not unprepared for the lesson. A pulse started behind Harry's scar, not pain exactly, pressure. Snape stopped beside his desk. The professor was far more powerful than Harry. That fact filled the space between them. Snape could take points, assign punishment, remove Harry from the room, or use magic Harry could not recognize. Harry had no intention of challenging him. He lowered his eyes slightly. But I should have read beyond the assigned chapter, he added. I will next time. Silence held. Snape looked at him for several seconds. Harry counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points from Slytherin, Snape said softly, for confusing an explanation with an excuse. A murmur moved through the room. Harry nodded. Yes, Professor. Snape turned away. Miss Granger, you may lower your hand before it separates from your body. Laughter broke the tension. Hermione colored. Snape answered his own questions and began the lesson. Harry wrote every word. Asphodel and wormwood produced a powerful sleeping potion. A bezoar was found in the stomach of a goat and acted against many poisons. Monkshood and wolfsbane were the same plant, also known as aconite. He memorized the information before the class ended. During practical work, Neville Longbottom melted his cauldron. The potion spread across the floor. Students climbed onto stools. Snape blamed Harry and Ron for failing to prevent it, although Harry had been seated across the room with Theodore. Harry watched Snape send Neville to the hospital wing. The professor's cruelty was precise. That did not make it less cruel, but it was not random either. Snape had looked at Neville's hands before the cauldron failed. He had known the boy was making a mistake and allowed it to continue. The observation entered the ledger that night. Snape asks questions outside assigned material, punishes reaction as much as error. Notices mistakes before they happen, sometimes does not prevent them. Harry considered that final line, then added, "Why? He lost Slytherin 5 points. The reaction in the common room was immediate." A second year asked whether Harry enjoyed making enemies. Draco suggested Snape had been testing him. Pansy said answering back was something Gryffindors did. Marcus Flint waited until the room quieted. 5 points is not serious, he said. Several students relaxed. Losing them in your first class is. Harry stood beside the fireplace. He had expected anger. He had not expected a public hearing. Professor Snape asked questions, Harry said. I answered. You questioned his teaching. I asked whether the material was assigned. That is questioning his teaching. Harry looked at Flint. Then why does the distinction matter? Flint's eyes narrowed. Harry realized he had done it again. A question that sounded like resistance because he wanted an actual answer. Gemma Farley spoke from an armchair. It matters because teachers control how a conversation is remembered. Harry turned toward her. Farley held a book open on her lap. She had not looked up. If Professor Snape says you were insolent, she continued, you were insolent. The room may remember differently. The record will not. Harry understood that. The Dursleys had controlled every account of Privet Drive. Neighbors remembered Harry as difficult because Aunt Petunia had told them he was. Teachers remembered Dudley as protective because Uncle Vernon had described him that way. The record belonged to the adult who spoke first. What should I have said? Harry asked. Flint answered. Nothing. Farley finally looked up. No. He should have admitted the knowledge gap and asked where to read about it. That's what I did. You did it after defending yourself. Harry reviewed the exchange in his mind. Snape had accused. Harry had corrected. Then he had conceded. The order had mattered. I see, Pansy scoffed. Do you? Harry looked at her. She said the professor controls the record. Correcting him publicly forces him to protect his authority. Asking for information lets him keep it. The room quieted again. Farley's expression altered slightly. Approval, perhaps. Flint folded his arms. You learn quickly. Harry did not say that the lesson was not new, only the table had changed. The next potions lesson, Snape asked Harry to identify aconite. Harry answered correctly. Snape gave no points. He asked for the properties of a bezoar. Harry answered, no points. He asked what would happen if porcupine quills were added before a cauldron was removed from the flame. Harry did not know. Where would you find the answer? Snape asked. Most potent potions, Chapter 3, or 1,000 magical herbs and fungi under porcupine quills. Snape's eyes narrowed. Acceptable. That was all. Draco congratulated Harry afterward as though Snape's lack of punishment had been an award. Theodore waited until they were alone, he noticed. What? That you changed the answer. Harry looked back toward the closed classroom door. So did you. I was watching you. Why was he? Theodore adjusted the strap of his bag. Professor Snape watches everyone. No, Harry thought of Neville's melting cauldron. He watches some people before they make mistakes. Theodore did not answer. Their friendship, if it was one, formed through absences. Theodore did not ask why Harry ate bread slowly enough to hide pieces in his sleeve. Harry did not ask why Theodore became silent whenever older students mentioned fathers. Theodore showed Harry which library shelves contained books that were not on first-year reading lists. Harry showed Theodore a stairway that shortened the route to charms by 47 steps. They studied together without calling it studying together. They sat at the same table while reading different books. When Draco joined them, Theodore's posture changed. His shoulders moved back. His expression emptied. Harry noticed and began redirecting Draco's questions whenever they became too personal. He did not do it openly. Open protection would humiliate Theodore. Instead, when Draco asked why Theodore's father had not attended the train departure, Harry asked whether the Malfoy family owned peacocks. Draco spent 12 minutes explaining. Theodore said nothing. Later, in the dormitory, he placed a chocolate frog on Harry's bedside table. Harry looked at it. "I didn't ask for this, I know. Why, I had two." There were 3 empty wrappers in Theodore's bin. Harry did not mention them. He ate the frog after Theodore closed his curtains. In Charms, Professor Flitwick taught them how to levitate feathers. Harry's first attempts failed. Hermione succeeded before everyone else. Draco managed after several tries. Theodore's feather rose too quickly and struck the ceiling. Harry's did not move. He repeated the incantation more softly. Nothing. He adjusted his wrist. The feather trembled. By the end of class, he could lift it 3 inches. Flitwick awarded him no special praise. Harry preferred that. The magic felt different from accidental magic. Accidental magic had behaved like a hand moving before the mind finished deciding. Wand magic required structure, words, movement, intention. Harry's control did not make the spell stronger, it made his failures smaller. When Ron's feather shot upward after Hermione corrected his pronunciation, the Gryffindors cheered. Harry looked at his own feather hovering steadily above the desk. 3 inches. Age-appropriate? Nothing remarkable. He lowered it carefully. Snape stood outside the classroom. Harry noticed him through the open door. The professor was speaking to Quirrell. Quirrell's head shook rapidly. His hands fluttered. "And no, Severus, I don't know anything about—" Snape said something too quiet to hear. Quirrell's stutter stopped. His shoulders settled. For one breath, he looked directly at Snape. The frightened professor disappeared. Something colder occupied his face. Then students entered the corridor. Quirrell recoiled. The stutter returned. Harry nearly walked into Theodore. "What is it?" Theodore asked. "Nothing." The answer came automatically. Theodore followed Harry's gaze. Snape had already gone. Quirrell hurried in the opposite direction, clutching the front of his robes. A sharp pain cut through Harry's scar. He stopped. The corridor tilted. His hand struck the wall. Theodore caught his sleeve, but could not hold Harry's weight. Harry slid to one knee. "Potter," Quirrell looked back. The pain vanished, not faded, vanished. Harry breathed through his nose. 1, 2, 3, his vision cleared. "What happened?" Theodore asked. "Headache." "That wasn't a headache." Students moved around them. Hermione stopped nearby. "Should I get a professor?" "No," she frowned. "You nearly collapsed. I'm fine now." "That doesn't mean—" "Please don't." The word stopped her. Harry had not meant it sharply. Hermione looked from him to Theodore. "All right," she said. "But you should go to the hospital wing." She left with the Gryffindors. Theodore waited. Harry stood. "Your scar?" he asked quietly. Harry looked toward the corridor where Quirrell had disappeared. "Yes. Does it happen often?" "Sometimes." "When?" Harry thought of the hut, the leaky cauldron. The great hall, Snape looking at him during the feast. Pain had occurred then too, though more faintly. "I don't know." Theodore heard the incompleteness. He did not press. That evening, Harry opened the ledger. Quirrell, stutter disappears when surprised or angry. Snape questioned him. Scar hurt when Quirrell looked back. Harry stared at the final entry. One event was not a pattern. He crossed out when and replaced it. Scar hurt at same time Quirrell looked back. That was accurate. Accuracy mattered. By October, Harry had mapped most of Slytherin's ordinary politics. Students inherited rivals before meeting them. Greengrasses distrusted Parkinsons. Bulstrodes sided with whoever appeared strongest. The Malfoy name opened conversations and ended them. The not name produced caution. Harry's name produced curiosity, but curiosity was becoming less useful as people learned he rarely offered satisfying answers. He was famous. That did not make him important inside the house. Importance required usefulness. His first usefulness arrived through homework. Draco had missed a line in Professor Flitwick's instructions and practiced the wrong wand movement for 3 days. Harry told him privately. Draco corrected it and performed the charm successfully in class. Afterward, Draco announced that Harry had helped him. Harry expected this to create a debt. Instead, Draco behaved as though public acknowledgement had paid it. That taught Harry something. To Draco, recognition was currency. To Theodore, discretion was. To Flint, obedience. To Farley, competence. Harry began choosing carefully which form to use. At the end of October, a notice appeared in the common room announcing that first years were not permitted outside their dormitories after curfew under any circumstances. The wording was new. Curfew had already existed, under any circumstances had not. Harry read the notice twice. Flint stood nearby. "What changed?" Harry asked. "Nothing that concerns first years." "That isn't what I asked." Flint smiled without humor. "You're becoming predictable." Harry looked at the notice. Someone went somewhere. Someone is always going somewhere. Then staff would not change the warning. Flint stepped closer. "You should learn which locked doors are warnings and which are invitations." "Which is this?" "A warning." Harry believed him. He also believed Flint knew why. That night, Harry woke to an empty bed across the dormitory. Theodore's curtains were open. His shoes were gone. Harry sat up. Draco slept. Crabbe snored. Goyle muttered. Harry counted to 60. Theodore did not return. He dressed quietly. Leaving the dormitory broke the new rule. Harry considered waking a prefect. He considered waiting. Then he noticed Theodore's pillow. A folded strip of parchment rested on it. Harry crossed the room and opened it. "Do not follow." The handwriting was Theodore's. Harry placed the note back exactly as he had found it. Then he followed, not because the warning failed. Because Theodore had left it where Harry would see it. That made it information. The common room was empty. The passage opened when Harry whispered the password. The corridor beyond was colder than usual. He found Theodore's trail at the second staircase. Not footprints. Patterns. A torch extinguished recently. Dust disturbed beside a wall. A door left slightly open where prefects normally closed it. Harry moved without lighting his wand. The castle at night behaved differently. Staircases groaned before moving. Portraits slept, but not deeply. Armor reflected moonlight. Harry counted turns. Theodore was heading upward, toward the third floor. Harry stopped at the end of a corridor. Voices came from beyond the corner. "Snape, you were seen." A second voice answered, "Quirrell, I don't know what you mean. Your incompetence is not convincing." Harry pressed against the wall. Theodore crouched behind a suit of armor farther ahead. Harry saw the pale outline of his face. Theodore saw him. Anger flashed. He gestured for Harry to leave. Harry shook his head. Snape continued, "You will not get another opportunity. I have no idea what you're suggesting." The stutter sounded perfect, too perfect. Each repetition arrived at an even interval. Snape moved closer. His shadow crossed the floor. "You know precisely what I am suggesting." A low sound rolled through the corridor, not human, not ghost. It vibrated through the stone. Harry felt it in his ribs. Quirrell's stutter stopped. "What was that?" The voice was clear. Snape did not answer. A door slammed. Theodore moved. His sleeve caught the edge of the armor. Metal struck stone. Snape's shadow turned. "Who is there?" Theodore ran. Harry ran in the opposite direction, not because they had planned it, because two directions divided pursuit. Footsteps followed Harry. Adult footsteps. Fast. He reached the end of the corridor and found the staircase gone. The landing ended at a wall. The castle had changed the route. Harry heard Snape approaching. He counted doors, one on the left locked, one on the right, unlocked. Harry entered and closed it quietly, darkness breathing, not his. Harry drew his wand but did not cast. A shape moved above him, 3 shapes, 6 eyes opened. The smell reached him first. Animal breath, old meat. Wet fur, moonlight crossed the room through a high window. The creature had 3 heads. Each was larger than Harry's body. One mouth opened. Teeth filled the dark. Harry's wand was useless. He knew that with complete clarity. No first-year spell could stop the animal. No cleverness could make him faster than 3 mouths at once. He stepped backward. His heel touched wood. A trapdoor lay beneath the creature's front paws. The central head lowered. Harry entered the cupboard room. Gray walls, wooden chair, fear outside. He counted. 1 breath. The left head watched his wand. 2. The right head watched movement. 3. The center head watched his face. Harry lowered the wand. The left head followed it. He moved his empty hand slightly. The right head followed. The center remained fixed on him. 3 different attentions, 1 body. Harry could not defeat it. He needed only a door. The handle behind him turned. Snape entered. The creature lunged. Snape's wand moved once. A wall of silver light struck the animals' heads backward. The force threw Harry against the door. Snape seized the back of Harry's robes and dragged him into the corridor. The door slammed. Something enormous struck it from the other side. The stone shook. Harry fell to his knees. Snape stood over him. The professor's face had become colorless with fury. "What?" he said softly. "Are you doing here?" Harry breathed. The cupboard room dissolved. "I followed someone." "Who?" Harry looked toward the corridor where Theodore had fled. Snape followed the glance. Understanding arrived. "Not all of it. Enough. Stand." Harry stood. Snape's wand remained in his hand. He was not out of breath. He had stopped the creature with 1 spell. The difference between them was absolute. "Name," Snape said. Harry thought of Theodore's bruise. "The note, do not follow. I didn't see." Snape stepped closer. "You expect me to believe you followed an unidentified student through the castle after curfew?" "No." "Then give me the name." Harry looked into the professor's eyes. The pressure returned behind his scar, not from Quirrell this time, from Snape. A strange pushing sensation moved against Harry's thoughts. The cupboard room rose automatically. The door closed. Snape's expression changed. The pressure stopped. For 1 second, surprise broke through his anger. Then both disappeared beneath control. "Interesting," Snape murmured. Harry's heart was beating too fast. "What did you do?" Snape's eyes sharpened. "Nothing you are qualified to ask about." That was not a denial. The professor lowered his wand. 20 points from Slytherin. Harry nodded. "Detention tomorrow?" "Yes, Professor." "You will not discuss what you saw behind that door." Harry looked at the wood. The creature growled on the other side. "Why is it in the school?" Snape's face hardened. "You continue to mistake survival for permission." Harry went silent. Snape leaned down slightly. "The next time you encounter a locked corridor, Mr. Potter, assume there is something beyond it that does not care how observant you are." The words struck harder than shouting. Snape knew exactly what Harry believed his observation could do. The professor straightened. "Return to your dormitory." "What about the other student?" "I will deal with him." Harry did not move. Snape's voice fell. That was not an invitation to negotiate. Harry left. He found Theodore waiting inside the common room. The boy stood near the dark windows, face pale against the green water. "You followed me." "Yes." "I told you not to. You left the note where I would find it." "That was so you wouldn't think I had been taken." Harry stopped. The explanation had not occurred to him. Theodore's anger shook at the edges. "You think everything is a clue. Usually it is." "No. Sometimes people are telling you exactly what they mean." Harry looked at him. "Why were you there?" Theodore's expression closed. Harry waited. "My father told me to learn what was being guarded." "Why?" "I don't know." "You do." "I know what he said." "What?" Theodore looked toward the dormitory stairs. "He said important men are moving pieces again. He wants to know which piece Dumbledore is hiding." Harry thought of the wrapped object Hagrid had taken from Gringotts, the numbered vault, the trapdoor beneath the animal. "You knew about the corridor?" "No, I heard Flint and Warrington discussing it." "You could have told me." Theodore laughed once without amusement. "You write down everyone's motives and you still think information is free." Harry felt the truth of that. "What does your father give you for it?" Theodore's face emptied. "Nothing." "Then why obey?" Theodore pulled back his sleeve. The bruise Harry had seen weeks earlier had faded. Another marked the same place. "My father does not like unanswered letters." Harry looked at the bruise. Theodore covered it. For several seconds, neither spoke. Harry could offer sympathy. Theodore would reject it. He could offer a plan. He did not have one. Instead, Harry said, "Snape knows someone else was there." Theodore's face tightened. "I didn't give your name." "Why?" "Because you didn't give mine when Draco asked about your clothes." Theodore stared. "That isn't the same." "No." Harry thought of the chocolate frog. "It is what I had." Theodore looked away. A shadow passed beyond the windows. Something long and pale turned in the lake. 20 points?" Theodore asked. "Yes." "Flint will be furious." "Yes." "Detention?" "Yes." Theodore nodded slowly. I'll say I went alone. No, you were caught. That doesn't make you safe. You cannot stop my father. Harry knew that. He could not stop Snape. He could not stop the creature. He could not stop any trained adult who decided to act. The threat hierarchy of the world had become visible, though Harry had no name for it. Children at the bottom. Older students above them. Professors above those. Dumbledore above the institution. Somewhere beyond all of them, the man who had killed Harry's parents waited in absence. Harry's skill did not move him upward. It only helped him see what stood above. "We need more information," he said. Theodore's expression became tired. "That is always your answer." "It is better than pretending we can fight." Theodore looked at him. Then, slowly, some of the anger left his face. "What did you see in the room?" "A dog." Theodore blinked. "A dog. 3 heads." "That is not a dog. It had fur. It had 3 heads. Both can be true." Despite himself, Theodore smiled. It vanished quickly. What was it guarding? A trapdoor. Theodore went still. Harry continued. "Hagrid removed something from Gringotts before term, a small package. Snape was warning Quirrell. Quirrell's stutter stopped when the creature made noise. You think Quirrell wants what is under the trapdoor? I think those facts happen near each other. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one." Theodore looked toward the entrance. "Then what do we do?" Harry thought of the ledger, the old pages, the kitchen schedules, Uncle Vernon's newspaper positions. The system had begun as a way to avoid punishment. At Hogwarts, it needed to become something else. "We watch the corridor," Harry said. "Not by going there." "How?" "Meals, classes, staff absences, Quirrell, Snape, anyone who changes routine." Theodore studied him. "You are going to make another list." "Yes, you lost the last hiding place." Harry looked at him. "How do you know?" Theodore's eyes shifted. Harry understood. "You moved the stone." "I wanted to prove it was unsafe. You could have taken the ledger." "I didn't. You wanted me to know you could." "Yes." Harry considered being angry. The emotion arrived. He counted to 5, then let it remain outside. "Help me hide the next one." Theodore's surprise was almost invisible. "Why?" "Because you already know what it is." "That does not make me trustworthy." "No." Harry held his gaze. "It makes you informed." Theodore thought for a long moment. Then he nodded. They returned to the dormitory separately. Harry waited until everyone slept before opening the ledger. He recorded the night without names. 3rd floor corridor, 3-headed dog, trapdoor under front paws. Adult magic required to control IT. Snape knows. Quirrell knows something. Theodore's father seeking information. He paused before the final lines. Snape tried to enter cupboard room, stopped when door held. He stared at the words. The cupboard room had protected him from a glance by a trained wizard. Not defeated Snape. Not resisted him indefinitely, only caused surprise. Harry underlined stopped, then added may have chosen to stop. Accuracy, always accuracy. At the bottom of the page he wrote, "Do not approach directly, watch routines, find what is under trapdoor." He closed the ledger. From the bed beside his, Theodore whispered through the curtains. "Harry." It was the first time Theodore had used his first name. Harry waited. "I'm sorry you followed me." "That doesn't make sense." "I know." A pause. "I'm still sorry." Harry looked at the dark canopy above him. "I'm sorry, I assumed the note was a clue." "It was also a clue. Then this is difficult?" "Yes." Silence returned. Harry placed the ledger beneath his pillow for the night. Tomorrow, Flint would demand an explanation for the lost points. Snape would assign detention. Theodore's father would expect an answer. Quirrell would continue pretending to be frightened. And somewhere above them, behind a forbidden door, 3 mouths guarded a trapdoor in the floor. Harry began counting the spaces between the creature's distant growls. On the 9th interval, he noticed something. The sound was not irregular. Every 58 seconds, the growling stopped completely, then began again. Harry opened his eyes. A pattern, not enough information, but a beginning. Chapter 5. What the ledger knew. Marcus Flint did not shout about the 20 lost points. Harry would have preferred shouting. Shouting ended when the adult, or older student acting like one, ran out of breath. Silence remained available indefinitely. For 3 days, nobody at the Slytherin table saved Harry a seat. There were always empty places. Students simply placed books, bags, or folded robes across them before he arrived. When Harry chose another section, the same thing happened the following morning. Draco spoke to him in the dormitory, but not in the Great Hall. Pansy Parkinson looked through him. Warrington asked Theodore questions about lessons while Harry stood beside them, as though Harry had become part of the stone wall. Theodore continued sitting near him in class. That cost him something. Harry could see it in the way older students began pausing when Theodore approached, allowing conversations to close just before he entered. "You don't have to do that," Harry said on the fourth morning. They were standing at the far end of the breakfast table. Every nearby place was occupied or claimed. Theodore took a roll from a basket. "Do what? Sit with me. I'm standing. You know what I mean." Theodore looked along the table. Flint sat at the center, speaking to the Quidditch team. He was not watching them. That meant very little. "If I stop," Theodore said, "they'll know it works." Harry understood. At Privet Drive, surrendering something once meant it could be demanded again. He took a piece of bread. "Then we should sit somewhere else." The other tables. Harry looked toward Gryffindor. Ron was laughing with the twins from his family. Hermione sat several places away, reading while eating. Neville had spilled juice on his sleeve. They would ask questions. Slytherins are already asking questions. Not allowed. Theodore considered the distinction. They sat on the stone floor near the wall. Several older students noticed. Flint finally looked over. Harry tore the bread in half and continued eating. He did not look away. Flint's mouth moved at one corner. The next morning, 2 places had been left open. The punishment was over. Harry recorded the result. Flint uses house isolation for minor disobedience. Ends punishment when IT stops producing embarrassment. He showed the entry to Theodore before hiding the ledger. Theodore read it twice. "You make him sound simple." "Patterns are simple when written down. People aren't." "No," Harry closed the book. "That's why I don't write conclusions." His detention with Snape occurred on Friday evening. Harry reported to the potions classroom at 7 and found no cauldrons prepared. Instead, 3 crates of dried ingredients sat beside the professor's desk. Snape did not look up from the essay he was marking. "You will separate the damaged moonseed from the usable specimens." Harry approached the crates. Hundreds of gray seeds filled them. "How can I tell the difference?" "Damaged moonseed develops a blue line beneath the outer shell." Harry picked one up. The shell was opaque. "How do I see beneath it?" Snape dipped his quill. "You are observant, are you not?" Harry heard the trap. If he complained, Snape would call it excuse-making. If he pretended knowledge, he would ruin the ingredients. He examined the tools beside the crates. A brass lamp, a glass plate, a shallow bowl of water. Harry held a seed before the lamp. The shell remained gray. He placed it in the water. It sank. He placed another beside it. That one floated. "Is the damaged seed lighter?" he asked. Snape continued writing. "You have been given sufficient information." Harry looked at the glass plate. He placed a seed on it and moved the lamp beneath. Light passed through the shell. A thin blue line appeared inside. Harry began sorting. Snape said nothing. The task took 2 hours. Harry's eyes ached by the end, but only 4 seeds had been placed incorrectly. Snape found all 4 without appearing to check the rest. He set them on the desk. "Why did you follow Mr. Knott?" Harry's fingers stopped over the final handful. Snape had known the name. Harry had assumed as much. He had not expected the professor to admit it. "I thought he might be in danger." "You were correct." Harry looked up. Snape's expression remained unreadable. "Is he?" Mr. Knott's danger did not begin in that corridor. Harry thought of the bruises. His father. Snape placed his quill down. "You are developing an unfortunate belief that identifying a danger makes you capable of addressing it." "I know I can't address his father." "Do you?" "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Snape rose. The professor did not need a raised wand to make the classroom feel smaller. "Your encounter with the Guardian should have corrected any confusion regarding your abilities." "It did. You entered a restricted corridor with a handful of first-year spells. I didn't plan to fight it. One doubts the creature would have respected that distinction." Harry lowered his eyes. Snape was right. Intent did not matter to teeth. "I made a mistake." The admission seemed to interrupt something Snape had prepared to say. His face changed almost invisibly. "You did." Harry placed another seed on the glass. The blue line showed beneath its shell. He moved it into the damaged pile. "Why did you ask?" he said. "Because I wished to hear whether you had invented a heroic explanation." "I didn't do anything heroic." "No." Snape moved closer to the crates. "You followed another student into danger and then concealed his identity. Gryffindors would call that loyalty." "I knew you already knew." Snape's eyes narrowed. "Did you?" "You looked toward the corridor before asking." Silence settled between them. Harry continued sorting. Snape picked up one of the usable seeds and examined it. "You have a talent for noticing the visible edge of matters you do not understand." Harry waited. It sounded like criticism. It was also accurate. "Professor," he said, "did you try to enter my mind?" Snape's hand closed around the seed. Harry counted 2 breaths. "You felt something?" "Yes." "What?" "Pressure, like someone testing a door." Snape set the seed down. "If you possessed the training necessary to recognize what occurred, you would also possess the sense not to discuss it in an open classroom." Harry looked at the walls. They were alone. He understood the correction. Open did not mean occupied, it meant unprotected. "Was it you?" Snape returned to his desk. "Finish the task." Harry did. At 9:17, Snape inspected the crates. "Acceptable." Harry gathered his bag. At the door, Snape spoke again. "Potter." Harry turned. "If you find Mr. not following instructions that place him in danger, you will notify a prefect or professor." "What if the instructions came from an adult?" "Especially then." Harry watched him. "Would the professor believe me?" "That would depend entirely on the professor." "Would you?" Snape's face closed. "Leave." Harry did, but he added the exchange to the ledger. "Snape knows about Theodore's father, expected me to claim heroism, told me to report dangerous instructions, did not promise to believe me." Harry drew a line beneath the final sentence. Then added, "Did not say he wouldn't. On Halloween, the troll entered the castle." Harry knew something was wrong before Professor Quirrell announced it. The professor's chair at the staff table had been empty for 9 minutes. Harry had begun timing staff absences after the incident in the 3rd-floor corridor. Most were ordinary. McGonagall left meals briefly when summoned by prefects. Professor Flitwick occasionally arrived late from the owlery. Snape disappeared without visible pattern, but always returned with the expression of someone newly disappointed by the world. Quirrell's movements were different. He left meals often. He never gave the same explanation twice. Headache, forgotten book, urgent preparation, illness. Once he claimed to have been called to the staff room, but Harry had seen the staff room door from the staircase. Quirrell had gone the opposite way. That Halloween evening, his absence lasted 9 minutes and 34 seconds. Then the great hall doors burst open. Quirrell staggered inside. "Troll," he gasped. "In the dungeons," he collapsed. The hall exploded into noise. Harry remained seated. The dungeons were beneath them. Slytherin House was beneath them. Yet Quirrell had entered from a corridor leading down from the upper floors. He had dust on his knees, pale dust. The 3rd-floor corridor contained pale stone. Professor Dumbledore sent the students back to their houses. Prefects shouted. Benches scraped. Harry looked toward Quirrell. The professor lay motionless. One hand had curled beneath his chest. The other remained visible. It was not trembling. Snape left through a side door, not toward the dungeons. Harry rose. Theodore caught his sleeve. "No, I didn't say anything. You were looking at the staff door." Harry looked across the hall. Hermione was missing from the Gryffindor line. He remembered her leaving charms earlier after Ron had said something that made several boys laugh. Harry had seen her enter the girls' bathroom near the 1st-floor corridor. A troll in the dungeons did not threaten her. A troll moving upward might. Harry looked for a Gryffindor prefect. Percy Weasley stood near the doors, counting students. Harry approached him. Ron saw Harry and frowned. "What are you doing?" Harry ignored him. "Granger isn't here." Percy stopped counting. "What?" She was in the 1st-floor bathroom before dinner. Ron's face changed. "How do you know?" "I saw her." Percy looked toward the teachers. The crowd pressed around them. You need to tell Professor McGonagall, Harry said. Percy hesitated for only a second, then forced his way toward the staff table. Ron grabbed Harry's arm. We should go. No, she's our house. You have a prefect? You think Percy can find her before a troll does? Harry considered the routes. He did not know where the troll was. He did not know whether Quirrell had told the truth about the dungeons. He did know he had no spell capable of stopping it. McGonagall can. Ron stared at him with open frustration. You really do make lists instead of doing things. The words struck more deeply than Harry expected. Ron ran after Percy. Theodore moved beside Harry. Do not follow him. I'm not. For several seconds, Harry hated that answer. Then McGonagall crossed the hall with her wand drawn, Percy and Ron behind her. Professor Flitwick joined them, adults, trained wizards, people who could stop a troll. Harry returned to the Slytherin line. Theodore said nothing. Hermione survived. Professor McGonagall found her before the troll reached the bathroom. Ron was given detention for leaving the evacuation route. Percy received points for reporting the missing student quickly. Harry received nothing. He preferred that. After the troll was subdued, Snape returned to the Great Hall with a torn robe and blood on one leg. He claimed the troll had caught him in a corridor. Harry looked at the bite marks, too wide for ordinary jaws, not wide enough for the troll's mouth. Three-headed dog. That night, the ledger gained 6 new lines. Halloween Quirrell left before troll announcement, arrived from upper corridor, dust on robes. Snape went toward 3rd floor, Snape injured by dog. Troll was distraction. Harry stared at the final sentence. It was a conclusion. He crossed it out. Then rewrote it. Troll may have been distraction. The next morning, Snape's eyes found him during breakfast. Harry looked once toward the professor's injured leg. Snape saw the glance. His expression hardened. Harry looked away. Theodore leaned closer. He knows you know. He knows I saw. Isn't that the same? No. Harry opened his book. If he knew what I thought, he'd stop looking. Winter settled over Hogwarts. The castle became colder but no less alive. Drafts moved through corridors. Snow collected on towers. The lake above the Slytherin windows darkened until the water looked almost black. Many students went home for Christmas. Draco left after informing everyone 3 times that his family would be spending the holiday at their manor. Theodore stayed. He claimed his father was traveling. Harry did not ask where. On Christmas morning, a small pile of gifts waited at the foot of Harry's bed. He stared at them for several minutes before touching anything. Hagrid had sent a carved wooden flute. The Weasley family had sent a jumper, though Harry did not understand why. Ron had signed the note in hurried writing and added that his mother made one for everyone. Hermione sent a book about elementary defensive spells. The note inside read, "Some of these require a partner. Ask before practicing." Harry read that sentence twice. He smiled before he realized he was doing it. Theodore received 3 packages. A set of silver quills from an aunt, a book on bloodline histories from an elderly relative, a narrow black box from his father. Theodore opened the first 2. He placed the black box inside his trunk unopened. "What is it?" Harry asked. "I don't know. You know what shape it is." Theodore looked at him. Harry waited. "A punishment rod." Harry did not understand at first, then he did. "Why would he send it?" "To remind me that he still has it." Harry looked at the closed trunk. "Did you send him information?" "Some." "About the dog?" Theodore's jaw tightened. "Not everything. What did you tell him?" "That something valuable is being protected inside the school." Harry controlled his breathing. "Why?" "Because he asked. That isn't a reason. It is in my family." Theodore stood. Harry rose as well. "You could have told me." "I did not tell him about you. That isn't what I asked." "No," Theodore said, his voice suddenly sharp. "You asked why I obey someone you have never met because you believe noticing bruises means you understand the hand that made them." Harry stopped. The cupboard room opened. He placed anger outside, then shame. The shame kept returning. "You're right," he said. Theodore looked unprepared for the answer. Harry sat again. "I don't understand." Theodore remained standing. "My father does not need to be in the room to punish me." Harry thought of Aunt Petunia's rules surviving even when she went shopping. "I understand that part." Theodore looked toward the trunk. After a moment he sat. They did not speak for several minutes. Harry picked up the chocolate frog Theodore's aunt had included in his gift. A card fell from the wrapper. Albus Dumbledore smiled up at him. Harry turned the card over. The writing described Dumbledore's defeat of Grindelwald, his discovery of uses for dragon blood, and his work in alchemy with Nicholas Flamel. Harry stopped reading. Nicholas Flamel, he knew the name. Not from a lesson from Hagrid. No, from the small wrapped package removed from Gringotts. Hagrid had said nothing about it, but the newspaper Harry had found in the leaky cauldron had mentioned a break-in at Gringotts. The attempted theft had occurred on the same day Harry and Hagrid visited the bank. The targeted vault was the one Hagrid had emptied. Harry opened the ledger. He found the page, Gringotts Vault 713, package removed for Dumbledore. Attempted robbery same day. He had copied the report weeks earlier. Beneath it, he wrote, Dumbledore worked with Nicholas Flamel. "What is it?" Theodore asked. "I don't know yet." Harry showed him the card. Theodore, read it. Flamel is an alchemist. What does an alchemist make? Gold, supposedly. Gold isn't worth guarding with a three-headed dog inside a school. It might be if there is enough of it. Gringotts already guards gold. Theodore looked again at the card, then something else. The library contained 28 books with alchemy in the title. Nicholas Flamel appeared in none of their indexes. Harry and Theodore searched for 5 days. Madame Pince began following them between shelves. They changed methods. Theodore searched family histories. Harry searched records of Dumbledore's work. Neither succeeded. Hermione found them on the 6th day. "You're looking in the wrong section." Harry closed the book. "How do you know what we're looking for?" "You have taken every introductory alchemy text from the shelves and left them in an order suggesting 2 people were searching different indexes." Theodore looked at Harry. Harry looked at Hermione. "You notice patterns?" Hermione folded her arms. "I notice people who mistreat books. We put them back, incorrectly." Harry glanced at the shelf. The books appeared aligned. Hermione stepped forward and moved one volume half an inch to the left. "Now they're correct." Theodore's mouth twitched. Hermione looked at the card on the table. "Nicholas Flamel. You know him?" Harry asked. "No." Theodore returned to his book. Hermione did not leave. "But I know where to look." Harry waited. She waited as well. Information was not free, even in Gryffindor. "What do you want?" he asked. Hermione looked offended. "I'm offering to help." "Why?" "Because you helped find me on Halloween." "I told Percy where you were." "Yes, that was information. And it helped." Harry looked at her. Hermione met his gaze without flinching. "Helping doesn't become less real because it was indirect," she said. Ron's accusation returned. "You make lists instead of doing things." Harry closed the ledger. "All right." Hermione brought them a thick book from the general reference section. She had read it for pleasure before term. Nicholas Flamel appeared near the end, the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. The stone transformed metal into gold. More importantly, it produced the elixir of life, immortality. Harry read the paragraph twice. Theodore read it once and went pale. "That is what my father wants." "Your father knows?" Hermione asked. Theodore closed the book. Harry answered before he could. "His family collects rare objects." It was a weak explanation. Hermione heard the weakness. She did not challenge it. "Then the stone is beneath the trapdoor," she said. Harry's head lifted. "How do you know about the trapdoor?" "Ron told me." Harry stared. Hermione's face reddened. "He said you were caught near a forbidden corridor with Professor Snape." "That does not include a trapdoor." "No, but Neville heard older Hufflepuffs talking about a growling door, and I noticed you and Theodore checking books about 3-headed creatures." Harry looked at Theodore. Theodore looked almost impressed. Hermione sat opposite them. "So," she said, "what are you going to do?" "Tell Snape." The answer surprised both of them. Hermione frowned. "You think Professor Snape is protecting it?" "He was injured stopping someone from reaching it." "He could have been trying to steal it." He warned Quirrell away from the corridor. "You heard them?" "Yes." Theodore closed his eyes briefly. Harry understood the reaction, house matters, secrets, but the secret had already moved beyond Slytherin. "Professor Quirrell?" Hermione whispered. Harry nodded. He released the troll. "You can't prove that." "No, Then Snape may not believe you. He already suspects Quirrell. Why hasn't he told Dumbledore? Maybe he has. Hermione leaned back. What if Dumbledore is already handling it? Harry thought of the forbidden corridor warning, of the letters that knew his bedroom and the school that had never checked it. Then telling another adult changes nothing. Harry prepared a note. He did not make it anonymous. Anonymous warnings could be ignored as pranks. He wrote only verifiable observations. Professor Quirrell left the Halloween feast 9 minutes before reporting the troll. He returned from an upper corridor with pale stone dust on his robes. Professor Snape left immediately and later returned injured in a way inconsistent with the troll. Quirrell's speech impairment repeatedly disappears under surprise or anger. Quirrell has shown unusual interest in the 3rd floor. Harry did not write Philosopher's Stone. If the note was intercepted, he would not reveal the object. He signed it H. Potter. Then he folded it inside his next potions essay, not on top, between the 3rd and 4th pages. Snape would find it while marking. For 2 days, nothing happened. On the 3rd, Harry's essay returned. A red line had been drawn beneath one sentence in the assignment. Assumption is not evidence. The note was gone. At the bottom of the final page, Snape had written, "Your observations are incomplete. You will not investigate further." Harry showed Theodore. "He believes you," Theodore said. "He believes enough." "How can you tell?" He didn't call it nonsense. Hermione was less convinced. "He also told you to stop." "Yes." "Will you?" "Yes." She stared. "You mean that?" "I wanted an adult to know. One does." For several months, Harry kept his word. He did not approach the corridor. He did not follow Quirrell. He continued recording routines, but from places he was allowed to be. Quirrell became thinner. His turban seemed larger. The sharp, sweet smell around it grew stronger until other students began calling it garlic. Harry did not think it was garlic. Garlic had a familiar bitterness from Aunt Petunia's kitchen. Quirrell smelled like something trying to imitate it. His scar hurt more often in defense against the dark arts, never during spells. Never when Quirrell stood across the room, only when the professor passed behind him or bent near his desk. Harry began choosing seats against walls. Quirrell noticed. The professor's stutter worsened. In March, Hagrid acquired a dragon egg. Harry found out because Hagrid sent him a note asking whether he knew anything about fireproofing furniture. Harry, Theodore, Hermione, and Ron visited the hut together. Ron had become part of the group by refusing not to become part of it. He and Harry still disagreed constantly. Ron thought Harry waited too long. Harry thought Ron acted before gathering enough information. Hermione informed both of them when they were being impossible. The dragon hatched. It bit Ron. It burned Hagrid's beard. It nearly set the roof alight. Harry spent most of the visit beside the door with his wand ready to open it, though he doubted any first-year spell would matter if the creature decided to attack. Hagrid had won the egg from a hooded stranger in a pub. "What did you tell him?" Harry asked. Hagrid blinked. "Who?" "The stranger." "Nothing important." "What did he ask?" "Just wanted to know if I could handle dangerous creatures." Theodore went still. "And what did you say?" Harry asked. Hagrid scratched his beard, told him any beast can be handled if ye know how. "What example did you give?" Hagrid looked toward the dragon. Harry waited. "Well, Fluffy, the dog." Ron made a noise of disbelief. "You named that thing Fluffy? Perfectly good name." "What did you tell the stranger about Fluffy?" Hermione asked. Hagrid's face changed. "Only that music puts him right to sleep." The hut became silent except for the dragon scratching at its crate. Harry looked at Theodore. Theodore looked back. The stranger knew the mechanism. That night, Harry wrote a second note to Snape. The person who supplied Hagrid's dragon egg learned that music bypasses the 3rd-floor guardian. Professor Quirrell's absences increased after Christmas. The stone may no longer be secure. Harry hesitated before including the word, then wrote it. Snape already knew what was guarded. If Harry was wrong, the professor could dismiss it. He folded the note inside an essay again. The essay returned the following day. No note, no written response. Snape kept Harry after class. The other students left. Theodore waited outside the door. Snape stood behind his desk. "Where did you hear the word stone?" "A book." Which book? Harry gave him the title. Who else knows? Theodore, Hermione Granger, Ron Weasley. Snape's face became dangerously still. You involved 2 Gryffindors. They found some of the information. That was not praise. No, Professor. Snape moved around the desk. Quirrell is not a puzzle designed for your amusement. I know. You do not know. The professor stopped directly before him. If you approach the 3rd floor again, there will be no house points, no detention, and no discussion. I will have you removed from Hogwarts. Harry believed him. Is the stone safe? Snape's expression did not change. Leave. That isn't an answer. Correct. Harry should have stopped. Instead, he said, if you cannot tell me it is safe, then you don't know. The pressure struck his mind harder than before. The cupboard room rose. The door slammed. Something pushed from outside, not anger, a blade of focused attention. Snape's presence touched the walls and searched for seams. Harry counted. 1, 2, 3. The door shuddered. 4. A crack appeared beside the frame. 5. The pressure vanished. Harry nearly stumbled. Snape caught his shoulder before he fell. The professor released him immediately. Harry's scar was not hurting. His head was. You cannot rely on that, Snape said quietly. Harry looked up. The room, Snape's face confirmed the name, had meaning even though Harry had never spoken it aloud. You constructed a crude, defensive response through prolonged necessity. It may resist casual intrusion. It will not withstand force. I know. No, Snape said, voice lower. You have survived 3 seconds of rain and concluded you can breathe underwater. Harry remembered the dog, the silver wall of magic, the absolute distance between a child and a trained wizard. I don't plan to use it against Quirrell. Plans become irrelevant once an enemy is aware of you. The words chilled him. Is he aware of me? Snape looked toward the door. When he answered, each word was controlled. You are Harry Potter. Every dangerous fool in Britain is aware of you. He opened the classroom door. Theodore stood outside. Snape's eyes moved to him. Mr. Knott, your correspondence will be inspected by the headmaster's office for the remainder of the term. Theodore went white. My father may complain to someone impressed by him. Snape walked away. Theodore stared after him. You told him. I told him who knew about the stone. You told him about my father. I didn't. Theodore's breathing changed. Harry reached for his sleeve, then stopped before touching him. Snape already knew. Theodore looked toward the dungeon corridor. My father will know the letters are being opened. Yes. He'll think I asked for protection. Did you? No. Do you want it? Theodore's expression twisted. I don't know. Harry understood that answer better than yes or no. The first inspected letter arrived 5 days later, black wax. No greeting. The handwriting was narrow and severe. Theodore read it, folded it, and placed it in the fire. Harry did not ask what it said. The next letter came on Tuesday, then another the following Tuesday. Always delivered with breakfast, always sealed in black, always addressed to T. Not. Harry recorded the pattern because Theodore asked him to. That mattered. Before, Harry had recorded without permission. Now Theodore placed each envelope on the table and waited while Harry noted the arrival time, seal, and handwriting. The letters contained anger, threats disguised as expectations. Questions about the stone. Theodore answered none of them. Professor Snape watched from the staff table. For the first time, Theodore's bruises began fading without replacements. Then, near the end of term, a 4th letter arrived. It came on Friday evening, not Tuesday morning. The wax was dark gray, not black. The front read Theodore, not T. Not. Harry noticed all 3 differences. Theodore noticed none. He opened it in the dormitory. His hands began shaking. What does it say? Harry asked. Theodore folded the parchment. Nothing. Harry looked at the envelope. Your father changed the seal. He uses different seals. Not this year. Theodore placed the letter in his pocket. What does it say? I told you. No, you said nothing. Theodore turned away. Harry did not follow. He counted 10 breaths. Then he said, It isn't from him. Theodore stopped. You don't know that. It arrived on the wrong day. Owls are delayed. It uses your first name. He knows my name. He doesn't use it. Theodore faced him. Fear had emptied his expression. You think your book knows my father better than I do? No. Harry looked at the pocket containing the letter. I think fear makes people stop checking. Theodore's hand curled. For one moment, Harry thought he might strike him. Instead, Theodore removed the parchment and threw it onto the bed. Harry read it. The message was brief. The headmaster would leave Hogwarts that evening. The protections around the stone would be vulnerable. Theodore was instructed to enter the third-floor corridor at midnight and recover whatever lay beneath the trapdoor. Failure would be punished when he returned home. At the bottom was a final line: "Do not involve Potter." His fame makes him careless. Harry read the line twice. Theodore's father had never met him. He might have opinions about Harry Potter. But careless was not the word people used after observing Harry. Someone inside Hogwarts had written this. Someone who knew Theodore feared his father. Someone who knew about the stone. Someone who wanted Theodore alone in the corridor. "Quirrell," Harry said. Theodore sat on the edge of the bed. "You cannot prove that." "No. What if it is my father?" "Then he is ordering you to pass protections designed by trained wizards." "He would." That answer silenced Harry. Yes, a cruel instruction did not prove forgery if the real man was cruel. "What will you do?" Harry asked. Theodore looked at the letter. "I don't know. You cannot go." "Snape is inspecting the post. If this passed inspection—" It didn't arrive with the post. Theodore looked up. The letter had been on his pillow. Neither boy had seen an owl. Someone had entered the dormitory or arranged for the letter to appear there. Harry checked the silver nameplate on Theodore's bed. A faint, oily residue marked one corner, the same sharp sweetness that clung to Quirrell's turban, not garlic, something beneath it. Harry touched nothing. "We tell Snape," he said. Theodore stood. "No. He told me to report dangerous instructions. He will lock me in his office. That may be the safest room in the castle. My father will know. Your father already knows you stopped answering." Theodore looked toward the black box in his trunk. Harry saw the frightened child beneath the fitted robes and controlled voice. Then Theodore's expression closed again. "I need air." He left the dormitory. Harry allowed 30 seconds before following. The common room was crowded. Theodore was not there. The stone entrance stood open. Harry reached the corridor. Empty, Theodore had planned the exit before speaking. Harry returned to the dormitory. Hagrid's wooden flute was missing from his trunk. So was Theodore's wand. Harry checked the clock. 10:43, the letter said midnight. Theodore had gone early, perhaps believing that changing the time would give him control. Harry opened the ledger. He did not need to reread it. The facts were already arranged. Dumbledore had received an urgent message from the ministry that afternoon. Harry had seen him leave the Great Hall before dinner. Snape had not appeared at dinner. Quirrell had eaten almost nothing. Theodore had received a forged or manipulated instruction. The flute was gone. The dog could be put to sleep with music. Tonight was not merely dangerous. It had been prepared. Harry tore 3 pages from the back of the ledger. On the first, he wrote to Gemma Farley. "Theodore Nott has left the dormitory under coercion. Inform Professor Snape immediately. If he cannot be found, inform McGonagall, 3rd floor corridor." He placed it in Farley's room by giving it to Pansy, who stared at him but obeyed when he said Theodore was in danger. On the second, Harry wrote to Hermione, "Dumbledore has left. The stone will be attempted tonight. Take Ron and find McGonagall. Do not go to the corridor." He gave the note to a second-year Ravenclaw who owed Theodore a library favor. On the 3rd page, he wrote only Quirrell. "Midnight. 3rd floor." He folded it and pushed it beneath the door of Snape's office. No light showed inside. Harry knocked. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. He did not attempt a spell. Snape's office would not be opened by a first-year charm. Harry returned to the corridor. He had informed a prefect. He had informed Gryffindors who could reach McGonagall. He had warned Snape. Help was in motion. That should have been enough. He should have waited. Then he pictured Theodore beneath the dog's 3 heads, holding a wooden flute with hands that shook whenever a letter arrived. The adult help might arrive in 1 minute. Or 20. Harry did not know. Information could reduce danger. It could not stop time. He walked toward the staircase. Not to confront Quirrell. Not to retrieve the stone. Not to become the child Ron had accused him of refusing to be. He was going to reach Theodore, keep him outside the room if possible, and retreat the moment an adult arrived. That was the plan. Harry knew plans became less useful the closer they came to people. He counted his steps anyway. At the first landing, the castle groaned. A staircase shifted into place. At the second, the torches extinguished one by one behind him. At the third, pain touched his scar, not sharp. Expectant. Harry entered the cupboard room long enough to place the fear outside. The grey walls appeared. 2 chairs waited. The second was no longer empty. Theodore sat in it with his head lowered, though Harry knew the image was only his own mind. Harry opened the door and returned to the corridor. Far above, something heavy stopped growling. Music had begun, quiet, uneven. A wooden flute playing the same 6 notes again and again. Theodore had reached the dog. Harry tightened his grip on his wand and continued upward. Behind him, somewhere in the castle, doors began opening. He had never intended to fight alone. Now he only had to remain alive long enough for the others to arrive. Chapter 6. The room that held the music became clearer as Harry climbed. 6 notes. A pause. The same 6 notes again. Theodore was not a talented musician. The first note arrived too sharply. The fourth wavered whenever he needed to breathe. Each repetition was slightly faster than the one before it, as though fear were pulling the tune forward. Harry reached the 3rd-floor corridor. The forbidden door stood open. Beyond it, the 3-headed dog lay sprawled across the floor. Its enormous paws twitched. 3 sets of eyelids fluttered as the flute's uneven melody kept the creature asleep. Theodore sat beside the trapdoor. He had placed his back against the wall so he could see both the dog and the corridor. The wooden flute shook between his hands. Harry stopped in the doorway. Theodore's eyes widened. He did not stop playing. Harry approached slowly. One head lifted an inch from the floor. Theodore played louder, the head lowered. Harry crouched beside him. "You need to leave." Theodore whispered between notes. "So do you. I'm handling it. You're sitting beneath 3 mouths. It has been asleep for 11 minutes. That doesn't make the 12th safe." Theodore's fingers slipped. The tune broke. All 6 eyes opened. Harry's hand closed over Theodore's wrist and forced the flute back toward his mouth. "Play." Theodore blew one harsh note. The center head growled. He began the melody again. The creature's eyelids descended reluctantly. Harry counted its breaths, deep, shallow, deep. The right head remained more alert than the others. The trapdoor beneath its paw was open. "You moved the paw?" Harry asked. "It moved when it fell asleep." "You opened the door?" "Yes." "Why haven't you gone down?" Theodore continued playing. Harry waited until the pause between repetitions. "I couldn't see the bottom," Theodore said. Fear had delayed him where Harry's warning had failed. Harry was grateful for it. "We're leaving." "My father didn't send the letter." "You don't know that. There was residue from Quirrell's turban on your nameplate." Theodore missed the first note. Harry tapped the flute. "Keep playing." The melody resumed. "Quirrell entered our dormitory," Theodore whispered, "or sent something that did." Theodore's face became paler. Harry reached for the trapdoor. He intended to close it before moving away. The wood would not shift. Something held it open from below. Harry pulled harder. The dog stirred. He released the handle. A voice spoke behind them. "Well done." The stutter was gone. Harry turned. Professor Quirrell stood in the doorway. He appeared taller without the frightened bend in his shoulders. His face had not changed, yet Harry could no longer find the nervous man from the leaky cauldron anywhere inside it. The professor held his wand loosely. The gesture was almost casual. Harry knew better. Quirrell could cross the corridor with one spell. Harry might manage a levitation charm before being stopped. Theodore might produce sparks. Neither mattered. Quirrell looked at the flute. "Do continue, Mr. Knott." Theodore played. His hands were shaking badly now. Quirrell stepped into the room. The dog's right head opened one eye. Quirrell flicked his wand. The wooden flute tore from Theodore's hands. Theodore gasped. The flute floated into the air and continued playing by itself. Perfectly. The 6 notes repeated without error. The dog settled at once. Harry watched the instrument. Quirrell had needed only a movement. No visible effort. The difference between a trained wizard and 2 first-years was not a gap they might cross through determination. It was a wall. "You wrote the letter." Harry said. Quirrell smiled. "No accusation in your voice, only confirmation. Professor Snape was correct about you." Harry's scar began to hurt. He kept his breathing even. "What did Snape say?" "That you mistake observation for protection." Quirrell moved closer. The pain increased with every step. Harry did not retreat. Retreating would place him nearer the dog. "You needed Theodore to open the corridor." Harry said, "I needed Mr. Not to bring the flute. You could have taken it yourself, but then you might not have followed him." Theodore looked at Harry. Quirrell had anticipated that. The forged letter had not been written merely for Theodore, it had been written for the ledger. Wrong delivery day, changed seal, different name. Residue deliberately left behind. Clues obvious enough that Harry would recognize the message as a trap. Quirrell had wanted him to recognize it. Harry had not discovered the plan. He had obeyed it more intelligently than Theodore would have. Quirrell saw understanding arrive. "Very good," he said. The praise felt colder than Snape's insults. "Why do you need me?" Quirrell's eyes moved to Harry's scar. "The final protection will not respond to me. You've already been through the trapdoor. Several times." Theodore lowered the flute that was no longer in his hands before realizing the movement was unnecessary. "You passed the other protections?" he asked. Quirrell barely looked at him. "Your professors are talented. They are not my equals." The words came from Quirrell's mouth. Something else seemed to speak beneath them. Harry's scar burned. The cupboard room opened automatically. He did not enter fully. He placed the pane outside one wall and remained near the door. Quirrell noticed the change in his face. His smile thinned. "There it is." Harry said nothing. That curious stillness. Severus found it fascinating. Theodore looked between them. Quirrell raised his wand. Down. Harry remained still. A white light struck the floor beside his foot. Stone burst upward. A fragment cut his cheek. The dog stirred but did not wake. The enchanted flute continued its melody. Quirrell's expression did not change. "The next one will not miss." Harry believed him. He crouched beside the trapdoor. The darkness below smelled of damp earth. A ladder descended several feet, then ended above nothing. Theodore looked at him. Harry lowered his voice. "Go first." "Why? If he wanted you dead, the letter would have sent you alone." That did not mean Theodore was safe. It meant Quirrell still considered him useful. Theodore climbed through the opening. As he lowered himself, his shoulder brushed the trapdoor frame. A small silver button fell from his cuff. It landed beside the hinge. Harry looked at it. Theodore's robes had been perfectly fastened when he left the dormitory. The loose thread at his wrist had been pulled deliberately, a marker. Harry did not acknowledge it. He followed. The ladder ended after 7 rungs. Theodore hung from the final one. "There's no floor." "Drop," Quirrell said from above. Theodore released his hands. He vanished. A soft impact followed, then a sharp intake of breath. "Plants," Theodore called. Harry descended and let go. Thick vines caught him. They tightened immediately around his ankle and waist. Harry drew his wand. "Don't move," Theodore whispered. He lay several feet away, half covered by black tendrils. The plant responded to movement. Harry knew that from herbology. Devil's snare preferred darkness and damp. It recoiled from light and heat. He knew the theory. He could not remember the correct fire charm. "Lumos," he said. Light appeared at the tip of his wand. The nearest tendril moved away slightly, not enough. Quirrell landed between them. The plant reached for him. He spoke one word. Blue fire ran across the vines without touching the children. The plant released them instantly. Harry fell to the stone floor. Quirrell's spell had required less time than Harry's light charm. Up. Harry stood. Theodore rose more slowly. One silver button was missing from the front of his robe now. It lay hidden among the retreating vines. Quirrell led them through the chambers. The obstacles had already been defeated. A swarm of winged keys circled beneath a high ceiling, but one broom hovered beside the far door, and a silver key remained trapped in its lock. Theodore stumbled near it. His hand touched the doorframe. Another button disappeared. In the next chamber, enormous chess pieces stood frozen around a shattered black king. Theodore paused beside a broken knight. His third button rolled beneath it. Harry looked forward. He understood. The notes would bring the adults to the corridor. The silver buttons would bring them farther. Theodore's immaculate clothes, selected and inspected by his father, were being dismantled into a path away from him. They reached a chamber where a troll lay unconscious. It was larger than the one from Halloween. Quirrell stepped over its arm. Harry and Theodore walked around. Theodore left nothing there. Perhaps the room required no marker. The trail of destruction was enough. The next chamber contained a long table and 7 potion bottles. Purple fire filled the doorway ahead. Black fire appeared behind them as soon as Quirrell entered. A roll of parchment lay on the table. Quirrell did not read it. He selected the smallest bottle and drank. There was only enough for one person, Theodore said. Quirrell looked at him. There was enough. He tapped the bottle. It refilled. Harry stared at it. The protection had been designed as a test of logic and limited supply. Quirrell had bypassed the limitation with magic. He handed the bottle to Theodore. Drink. Theodore did, then Harry. The potion was cold enough to make his teeth ache. They walked through the purple fire. The final chamber was almost empty. A tall mirror stood at the center. Its frame was carved with words Harry could not understand at first. The letters appeared reversed. The mirror of Arised, he had seen it once before. During Christmas, while wandering after waking from a nightmare, Harry had found the mirror in an unused classroom. It had shown him a crowd of people with faces like his own, a woman with green eyes, a man with untidy hair. Parents who smiled at him as though his presence did not require explanation. Dumbledore had found him there and moved the mirror the following day. Harry had not recorded that night in the ledger. The memory had felt too much like a diary entry, too much like wanting. Now the mirror waited beneath the school. Quirrell closed the door. Purple fire rose behind it. "Stand before it," he said. Harry did not move. "What does it do?" Theodore asked. "Shows desire," Harry said. Quirrell's attention sharpened. "You have used it. I looked at it. What did you see?" Harry pictured his mother's hand resting on his shoulder. Nothing useful. Quirrell's smile disappeared. He seized Theodore with one arm and pressed his wand beneath the boy's jaw. Theodore froze. Harry's mind began counting before he chose to 4 steps between himself and the mirror. 6 between Quirrell and the door, Quirrell's wand touching skin, Theodore's wand still inside his robe. Too slow, too far, no spell Harry knew would matter. Quirrell looked at him. "Stand before the mirror." Harry obeyed. His reflection appeared. For a moment, nothing changed. Then the reflected Harry looked over his shoulder. The mirror showed Quirrell lying unconscious on the floor. Theodore stood beside Professor Snape. McGonagall was opening the chamber door. Harry's reflected hand entered its pocket. It removed a deep red stone. The reflected Harry placed the stone inside his real pocket. Something struck Harry's leg. Weight, small and solid. The stone was there. Harry did not touch it. Quirrell watched his face. "What do you see, my parents? Do not lie to me." The voice did not come entirely from Quirrell. It was thinner, older. It entered the room like cold air through a crack. Quirrell released Theodore. The boy staggered away. The professor reached toward his turban. Harry's scar became a line of fire. "Master," Quirrell whispered, "he has found it." The cloth unwound. Layer after layer fell. Theodore made a small sound. There was no wound beneath the turban, no ordinary injury. A second face rested against the back of Quirrell's head. Pale skin, red eyes, flattened features that resembled a face remembered by something that hated being human. Harry knew him, not from photographs, not from description. His body knew before his mind accepted it. The scar recognized the person who had made it. Voldemort looked at him. The cupboard room opened. Harry entered and slammed the door. The gray walls shook. Outside, the real chamber became distant. Voldemort's voice spoke from every wall. "Harry Potter." The room cracked. A thin black line appeared above the chair. Harry counted. 1. "You survived me." The line lengthened. 2. "Show me how." A second crack appeared near the floor. 3. Pressure filled the room. It was nothing like Snape's careful intrusion. Snape had tested the door. Voldemort attempted to remove the walls. 4. 5. Harry sat in the wooden chair, fear outside, pain outside, the image of his mother outside. The stone remained in his real pocket. Voldemort pressed harder. The first wall bowed inward. You are not powerful." Harry knew that. The knowledge helped. There was no hidden force waiting to awaken, no spell in his blood, no strength equal to the wizard outside. He was an 11-year-old child sitting behind a door built during punishments. The door would fail. The question was not whether, only when. 6, 7, the pressure withdrew. Harry heard Quirrell breathing. The assault came in pulses. Voldemort required Quirrell's body to carry it. Each surge lasted 7 counts. Each pause lasted 3. Harry recorded the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Release. 1, 2, 3 again. The next attack struck harder. A piece of grey wall fell inward. Harry kept counting. Outside the room, his body had fallen to one knee. He could feel Quirrell's hand gripping his shoulder. Theodore was speaking. The words reached Harry through water. "Leave him alone." A flash of light crossed the chamber. Theodore had drawn his wand. Lumos. White light burst into Quirrell's eyes. It was not an attack. It was the first spell Theodore could perform without thinking. Quirrell turned. The pressure vanished at count 5. Harry fell fully back into the real room. Theodore ran toward him. Quirrell swept his wand sideways. Theodore flew across the chamber. He struck the wall and collapsed. Harry tried to rise. Quirrell's hand closed around his throat, not hard enough to crush. Hard enough to control. "The stone," Voldemort said. Harry's fingers touched the shape in his pocket. Quirrell's wand pointed at Theodore. The boy was breathing slowly. 1 breath every 4 seconds. Harry counted them. Quirrell leaned closer. "Give it to me, and he lives." Harry looked at Theodore. A silver thread hung from his cuff, 4 missing buttons. A path behind them. Help was moving, or it was not. Harry could not know. He counted the time since leaving the dormitory, the stairways, the corridor, the flute, the chambers. Approximately 26 minutes. Farley would have reached Snape. Hermione would have reached McGonagall, unless they had been stopped. Unless Snape had ignored the note. Unless McGonagall had dismissed them. Unless Quirrell had blocked the route. The cupboard room had been built around the belief that nobody was coming. Harry had survived because he stopped expecting rescue. But tonight he had written 3 notes. He had told people where to go. He had given them the choice. The old rule no longer described the entire world. Harry moved his hand away from the stone. "No," Quirrell's eyes widened. Voldemort smiled through the second face. "He will die." "So will I if you get it, a sensible child." The hand tightened around Harry's throat. "You belong in Slytherin." Harry could not breathe. The edges of the chamber darkened. He counted heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Quirrell's attention divided. One part held Harry, one watched Theodore, one listened to Voldemort. The pressure inside Harry's mind began again, but the rhythm had changed. 6 counts. Pause. 6. Pause. Quirrell was tiring, not weak, not vulnerable to Harry. Only maintaining too many things at once. Harry tapped 2 fingers against his leg, 6 times. Theodore's eyes opened. Harry could not tell whether he understood. Another mental surge. 6. Release. Harry tapped again. Theodore's hand moved beside his robe. His wand lay 2 feet away, too far. A silver button remained attached near his collar. Theodore pulled it free. The next pressure came. Harry entered the cupboard room. The ceiling split. Voldemort stood outside the broken wall now, red eyes visible through the cracks. Harry counted to 6. The pressure released. In the real chamber, Theodore threw the button. It struck the mirror. A tiny sound, metal against glass. Quirrell turned instinctively. Harry dropped. His weight slipped beneath Quirrell's arm. He hit the floor, rolled once, and crawled toward the mirror. Quirrell recovered immediately. A spell struck Harry's back. His arms stopped working. His legs locked. He lay flat against the stone. A trained wizard had ended his escape with one movement. Quirrell approached. Theodore raised his wand. Quirrell disarmed him without looking. Theodore's wand spun away. "Children," Quirrell said. The word contained disgust. He bent and reached into Harry's pocket. The chamber door exploded inward. Stone fragments filled the air. Professor McGonagall stood beyond them. Her wand was raised. Marcus Flint and Gemma Farley were behind her, held back by an invisible barrier. Snape entered through the smoke. His eyes found Harry first, then Theodore, then Quirrell. Quirrell's hand remained 1 inch from the stone. Snape attacked. Harry did not recognize the spell. A narrow line of white light crossed the chamber. Quirrell blocked it. The impact cracked the mirror's stone base. McGonagall transfigured the broken door into a flock of iron birds. They struck from 3 directions. Quirrell turned them to ash. Snape moved left. McGonagall moved right. They did not speak. Their spells crossed without colliding. Silver chains rose from the floor. The chamber walls bent inward. The stone beneath Quirrell's feet became black water. Quirrell countered everything, not easily, but completely. A wave of force threw McGonagall into the wall. Snape remained standing. Quirrell smiled. The face behind his head began laughing. Harry understood the hierarchy. McGonagall and Snape were trained adults. They possessed power Harry could barely describe. Together, they forced Quirrell backward. But something inside Quirrell was stronger than either of them. Snape placed himself between Harry and the next spell. The curse struck his shield. The shield fractured. Snape staggered. Quirrell raised his wand again. Then the purple fire went out. The chamber became cold. Dumbledore stood in the doorway. He did not shout. He did not cast immediately. He simply entered. Voldemort's laughter stopped. Quirrell's body stiffened. Dumbledore looked at the second face. Tom. The name changed the room. Not Dark Lord, not Voldemort. Tom, a name belonging to a boy who had once stood inside Hogwarts and been measured by the same hat. Hatred twisted the pale features. Quirrell screamed. Black smoke tore from him. It poured upward, gathered near the ceiling, and rushed toward the door. Dumbledore's wand moved. Golden light filled the chamber. The smoke struck it and scattered. For an instant, red eyes appeared within the darkness. They looked at Harry. The cupboard room shook one final time. Then the shadow escaped through a crack in the stone and vanished into the castle. Quirrell collapsed. The body hit the floor like an empty robe. The binding spell released Harry. He drew one breath, then another. He reached into his pocket and removed the stone. Its red surface glowed faintly in his palm. Dumbledore crossed the room. Harry did not hand it to him immediately. He looked at the headmaster. "Did you know?" Dumbledore's expression became grave. "I suspected." "That isn't what I asked." Even now, the old response arrived. Exact words, exact question. Dumbledore looked at Quirrell, then at Theodore. "No," he said. "I did not know how far he had gone." Harry gave him the stone. Dumbledore closed his fingers around it. The room tilted. Snape caught Harry before he struck the floor. The last thing Harry heard was Theodore counting his breaths. Harry woke in the hospital wing. White curtains surrounded the bed. Sunlight crossed the blanket. He counted the ceiling beams. 7. The ache behind his eyes returned on the 3rd. Madame Pomfrey appeared before he could sit up. "No. I didn't say anything. You were about to attempt something foolish. I was going to sit." "Exactly." She forced him back with one hand and gave him a potion that tasted of metal and mint. Theodore occupied the next bed. A curtain separated them. "Theodore," a pause. "I'm awake. Are you hurt?" "Bruised." Madame Pomfrey pulled the dividing curtain open. Theodore lay against several pillows. One arm was wrapped. His face looked exhausted. His robe had been placed on a nearby chair. 4 buttons were missing. Professor Snape stood beside the window. Harry had not noticed him. That was either because the potion had dulled his senses or because Snape had chosen the exact angle least visible from the bed. Snape approached. Madame Pomfrey looked at him. 5 minutes. "I require 2. "You always require 2 and take 10. Snape waited. Madame Pomfrey went to her office. Harry looked at the professor. "Did Farley find you?" "Yes." "Hermione found McGonagall?" "Yes." "The buttons?" Snape glanced at Theodore. "Mr. Knott's trail prevented Professor McGonagall and me from wasting time determining which protections had been breached." Theodore looked down. Snape continued. "An unexpectedly sensible improvisation." From Snape, it sounded almost generous. Harry remembered Quirrell's spells. "You couldn't stop him." Snape's face hardened. "No, you and McGonagall." "No." Harry absorbed that. The professor did not soften the truth to preserve authority. Would Dumbledore have lost? Snape's eyes became unreadable. "That question has no useful answer." "Because you don't know." "Because power is not arithmetic." Harry looked at his hands, small, bruised around the fingers. "I didn't hold him out." Snape knew what he meant. "No, the room broke." It was always going to. You thought survival demonstrated strength. Harry looked up. Snape's voice remained quiet. Survival demonstrates only that the event ended before you did. The words should have felt cruel. Instead, they felt like the first accurate explanation anyone had offered. The room gave me time. Yes, 6 counts. Snape's eyes sharpened. You noticed the intervals. Quirrell had to breathe, and you used the lapse to coordinate with Nott. Harry looked toward Theodore. He noticed the tapping. Snape turned to him. Theodore's mouth tightened. My mother counted with her fingers. Snape studied him for a moment, then returned his attention to Harry. Neither of you defeated Quirrell. No, you distracted a vastly superior opponent for several seconds. Yes. You should regard those seconds as borrowed, not earned. Harry nodded. Snape placed a small black book on the blanket. It had no title. What is it? An introductory text on mental discipline. Harry reached for it. Snape placed one finger on the cover. This is not instruction in resisting the Dark Lord. I know. Say it. Harry looked at him. It will not make me strong enough to resist Voldemort. The name did not make Snape flinch. It may teach you why your existing method is unstable, Snape said. You will not practice without supervision. Whose? Snape removed his hand. Mine. The answer surprised Harry. Snape seemed displeased that he had given it. What changed? Harry asked. Nothing. You thought I was spoiled. Snape's face became still. Theodore looked toward the ceiling. Harry continued before the professor could stop him. You expected me to claim heroism in detention. You thought I would investigate after you told me not to. You did investigate. I recorded routines. I told you what I found. And then entered the corridor. After Theodore left. That distinction will not appear favorably on your gravestone. Harry waited. Snape's gaze moved to the ledger on the table beside the bed. Someone had recovered it from the dormitory. You warned 3 separate people before following, Snape said. One of whom you correctly assumed would ignore house boundaries to contact a professor. Hermione. Yes. You read the ledger. Relevant pages. Harry felt exposed. The cupboard room stirred. Snape noticed. I have no interest in your aunt's rubbish bins. Harry's face warmed. You read those. I said I had no interest. That isn't the same. A faint, unwilling expression crossed Snape's face. Not a smile, the memory of one. No, he said. It is not. He turned toward Theodore. Your father has been informed that you were injured during an attempted attack on the school. Theodore's fingers tightened on the blanket. What did he say? Nothing of consequence. Will I be sent home? No. Theodore looked at him. Snape's voice became colder. Your father may exercise authority over his household. Hogwarts is not his household. Something in Theodore's face loosened. Not relief. Relief would require trust in the future, but the beginning of space. Snape moved toward the door. At the curtain, Harry spoke. Professor. Snape stopped. Thank you. The professor did not turn around. You followed instructions inadequately, endangered yourself repeatedly, lost 20 points, and required rescue by 3 members of staff. Yes, your gratitude is misplaced. You came. Snape remained still, then he left. Dumbledore visited later. He brought no sweets. Harry appreciated that. The headmaster sat beside the bed and placed his hands over one knee. The stone will be destroyed. Can it be? With difficulty. Nicholas Flamel has agreed. He'll die. In time. Harry thought of the mirror. A person who wanted the stone, but not to use it, could retrieve it. Dumbledore had chosen that protection. You knew Quirrell might use a student. I believed the other protections would prevent him from reaching the mirror. They didn't. No. Dumbledore's honesty sounded heavier than Snape's. Harry looked toward the window. Why did no one check? Dumbledore's face changed. Harry did not need to explain the question. The Dursleys, he said. Hagrid said you knew where I was. I did. You knew the cupboard. I knew the address placed on your letters. That isn't what I asked. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly. When you were left there, powerful protections were placed around the home. I believed remaining with your mother's family was the safest option available. Safe from Voldemort. Yes. Not safe. Dumbledore did not answer immediately. The silence differed from Hagrid's. Hagrid had lacked an answer. Dumbledore possessed one he did not like. No, he said finally. Not in every way that mattered. Harry looked at him. Did you know? Not enough. You didn't look. Dumbledore accepted the words without defense. That failure is mine. Harry had expected wisdom, perhaps an explanation about ancient magic, perhaps a reason large enough to make the cupboard necessary. The admission was smaller, more useful. What happens in summer? You will not return without changes being made. What changes? A member of staff will inspect the home. You will have direct means to contact the school. Your living arrangements will be reviewed. By whom? Professor McGonagall has volunteered. Harry imagined Aunt Petunia facing McGonagall. For the first time since waking, he felt something close to safety, not certainty, a scheduled inspection, a named person, a method of contact, specifics. Good, he said. Dumbledore smiled sadly. You are very young to require promises in writing. Spoken ones disappear. The headmaster looked at the ledger. Then I shall write them. He did. Harry kept the parchment. At the end-of-year feast, Slytherin's banners hung from the ceiling. The house had won neither the Quidditch Cup nor the House Cup. Gryffindor took the second, after Dumbledore awarded points to several students for actions surrounding the stone. Ron received points for helping Hermione reach McGonagall through a blocked staircase. Hermione received points for recognizing the seriousness of Harry's note and refusing to accept a prefect's dismissal. Theodore received points for leaving a trail through the protections. Harry received points for providing information to the staff before entering danger. The phrasing mattered. Dumbledore did not praise courage. He did not call Harry a hero. He praised preparation. Slytherin applauded, not because Harry had survived Voldemort. Most students were not told that part. They knew only that Quirrell had attempted to steal something, Theodore had been coerced, and Harry's warnings had brought professors to the correct place. Marcus Flint approached Harry after the feast. You sent a note to a Gryffindor. Yes. 2. 1 note. 2 Gryffindors? Flint considered correcting him, then decided not to. You also informed Farley? Yes. And Snape? Yes. 3 routes. One could fail. Flint looked toward the Gryffindor table. Ron was trying to balance a spoon on his nose. Hermione was pretending not to know him. Most Slytherins would have kept it inside the house. That would have reduced the number of adults looking. You trusted Gryffindors. I trusted Hermione to tell a professor. That is not the same. No, Flint smiled. Good. He held out his hand. The first time they had shaken, Flint squeezed to test him. This time he did not. Harry shook it. Draco waited until Flint left. My father says Quirrell was never from a proper family. Harry looked at him. What does that change? Draco opened his mouth. Then, perhaps remembering Madame Malkin's shop, closed it again. Nothing, he admitted. It was the first opinion Harry heard Draco form without borrowing it. The train carried them back toward London. Harry sat with Theodore, Ron, and Hermione. 4 people made the compartment crowded. Harry chose the seat beside the window. Ron opened a box of sweets. Hermione opened a book. Theodore examined the stitching on his repaired robe. The replacement buttons did not match the originals exactly. They're brass, Draco had said earlier, with evident concern. Theodore had kept them anyway. Harry opened the ledger. Ron groaned. You're not writing about us again, are you? Yes. Hermione lowered her book. Are you going to ask permission? Harry looked at the page. The old entries remained. Ron Weasley asks before entering, stares, then apologizes. Hermione Granger helps without waiting, knows spells, dislikes being corrected. Harry turned the book around. May I update these? Ron read his entry. You made me sound like a dog. I didn't. You wrote that I stare. You did. Hermione leaned across him. You also wrote that I dislike being corrected. You did. I dislike being corrected inaccurately. Harry picked up the pencil. May I write that? Hermione considered. Yes. Theodore looked at his own page. Does not ask questions he cannot take back. He tapped the sentence. Keep that? Harry nodded. He added new lines. Ron acts before planning. Sometimes this helps. Hermione takes rules seriously. Takes danger more seriously. Theodore leaves markers. Harry paused, then wrote, trusts carefully. Theodore read it. Is that about me? Yes, it could be about you. Harry looked down. After a moment, he added his own name, Harry Potter, not as difficult to predict as he believes. Ron laughed loudly enough to frighten a passing owl. Harry closed the ledger. When the train reached King's Cross, Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon waited beyond the barrier. Uncle Vernon saw Harry first. Then he saw Professor McGonagall standing behind him. The color left his face. McGonagall held a folder beneath one arm, written promises, scheduled inspections, specific consequences. Harry looked at the Dursleys. The old calculations began. Uncle Vernon's newspaper position, Aunt Petunia's hands, Dudley's boredom, the distance to the cupboard. Then Harry stopped. The patterns still mattered. They simply no longer described every possible outcome. Professor McGonagall placed one hand on Harry's shoulder, not to move him, not to claim him, only to make her presence visible. Harry stepped through the barrier. That night, beneath the stairs, he lifted the old floorboard. The first pages of the ledger remained where he had left them. He read the earliest line, "Father leaves 7:42 if traffic normal." The cupboard smelled the same, Polish, dust, old fabric. Harry sat on the thin mattress and entered the room inside his mind. Gray walls rose. The wooden chair waited. The second chair stood opposite it. This time it was not empty, not exactly. Theodore's repaired cuff rested over one arm. Hermione's book lay on the seat. Ron's sweet wrapper had been tucked between the cushions. Snape's black text rested on the floor. McGonagall's written promise hung on the wall. They were only images, mental objects. No person had truly entered. The room still belonged to Harry. But it no longer existed solely to keep everyone out. He returned to the ledger and wrote one final entry beneath the record of his first year. Privet Drive rule, no one is coming. He stared at it, then drew one careful line through the sentence, not erased. It had been true once. Truth did not become shameful simply because circumstances changed. Below it, Harry wrote, "New rule, people cannot come if they do not know where to go." He placed the ledger beneath the floorboard. Upstairs, Uncle Vernon began speaking loudly to Professor McGonagall. His voice rose, then stopped abruptly. Harry counted the silence. 1, 2, 3. On the fourth second, Professor McGonagall said his name. "Harry, not boy, not you." Harry opened the cupboard door and answered. Chapter 7. The rules that followed him home. Professor McGonagall's first inspection lasted 43 minutes. Uncle Vernon spent the first 11 pretending it was not an inspection. He called it a visit. He offered tea. He laughed too loudly when Professor McGonagall declined. He explained that Harry was a difficult child, a private child, a boy who preferred small spaces and had always been given everything necessary for a healthy upbringing. Professor McGonagall listened from the best chair in the sitting room. She did not interrupt. That frightened Uncle Vernon more than interruption would have. Aunt Petunia sat rigidly beside him. Dudley had been sent upstairs, though the ceiling creaked often enough to reveal that he was lying on the landing and listening through the banisters. Harry stood near the doorway. He had been invited to sit. He remained standing because the room was easier to read from its edge. Professor McGonagall wore ordinary clothes, though nothing about her appeared ordinary. A dark green coat had replaced her robes. Her hat was plain. Her wand remained hidden. Uncle Vernon watched both sleeves anyway. "So," he said, once his explanation of Harry's difficult nature had ended, "as you can see, everything is perfectly satisfactory." Professor McGonagall looked at Harry. "Is it?" The question was addressed to him. Uncle Vernon answered, "Of course it is." McGonagall did not look away from Harry. Uncle Vernon's mouth remained open. Harry considered the room. Aunt Petunia's hands were folded too neatly. Uncle Vernon leaned forward, prepared to interrupt. The written promises in Professor McGonagall's folder included an inspection of sleeping arrangements, access to sufficient food, permission for magical correspondence, and a method of contacting the school in an emergency. The promises did not include kindness. Harry had not asked for that. Kindness could not be inspected. "The smallest bedroom is mine now," he said. Professor McGonagall nodded. "Your meals?" "The same as theirs." Aunt Petunia flinched at the phrasing, not enough to be obvious. "Access to your school materials? They're in the wardrobe. Locked." "No, your wand?" Uncle Vernon inhaled. Harry answered before he could speak. In the wardrobe, in its box. Accessible to you, not legally usable outside school. That was not what I asked. Harry looked at her. The correction was deliberate, not cruel, precise. Yes, he said. Accessible. Professor McGonagall rose. I would like to see the room. Uncle Vernon rose with her. There's really no need. She looked at him. Uncle Vernon sat. Harry led her upstairs. Dudley scrambled into his bedroom before they reached the landing. His door slammed. Professor McGonagall's eyebrow moved, but she said nothing. The smallest bedroom looked different from the previous summer. The broken toys had been moved. The bed had clean sheets. Harry's trunk stood beside the wardrobe. A writing desk had appeared beneath the window. It was old, but usable. Aunt Petunia had placed a lamp on it. The changes had been made because a professor was coming. That did not make them unreal. Harry had learned that motives and results could be judged separately. Professor McGonagall inspected the room. She opened the wardrobe only after asking. She checked the window. She examined the trunk lock. Then she looked beneath the bed. Uncle Vernon, who had followed them after all, made a sound of outrage. Really? McGonagall straightened. Children are often placed in acceptable rooms shortly before inspections. Aunt Petunia had come to the doorway. Her face tightened. We are not criminals. No, Professor McGonagall said. Criminals are investigated by different people. Uncle Vernon's face became purple. Harry looked toward the window before the expression could affect him. The street outside remained orderly. A car reversed from a neighboring drive. Mrs. Number 7 watered flowers despite the clouds. The world continued while one adult finally spoke to the Dursleys, as though their version of events was not automatically true. Professor McGonagall placed a square of cream parchment on the desk. A small silver border ran around the edge. This is for school contact. Uncle Vernon stared. It's enchanted. Yes, in my house. Yes, you cannot leave dangerous objects. It is parchment, Mr. Dursley. It is unnatural parchment. Professor McGonagall's mouth became thin. Harry approached the desk. How does it work? You write my name at the top, followed by your message. The writing will appear on a corresponding sheet in my office. Can anyone else read it? The headmaster can in an emergency. Professor Snape has access during the school year. Harry looked at her. Why, Snape, he requested it. That was not a full answer. It was enough for now. What counts as an emergency? Professor McGonagall considered. Immediate danger. Being denied food for more than one meal. Confinement lasting longer than 2 hours. Loss of access to your wand or school materials. Any attempt to prevent your return to Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon made an offended noise at the final condition. McGonagall continued without looking at him. You may also contact me with questions that are not emergencies, though replies may not be immediate. Harry touched the corner of the parchment. Will you know if it is destroyed? Yes. Uncle Vernon stopped protesting. Harry noticed specific consequences mattered. Professor McGonagall made Uncle Vernon sign a second document confirming that he understood the conditions. Aunt Petunia signed as well. Harry read both signatures. Uncle Vernon pressed so hard that the nib tore the paper. Aunt Petunia's handwriting remained perfect. When Professor McGonagall left, Uncle Vernon stood beside the front door for several seconds after it closed. Harry waited at the foot of the stairs. The old household rules returned around them. Uncle Vernon angry, Aunt Petunia ashamed, Dudley waiting for someone smaller to suffer for both. Harry's body began preparing before anyone spoke. Shoulders relaxed, hands open, eyes lowered, but not too far. The cupboard room appeared in the distance. Uncle Vernon turned, his mouth opened, then he looked at the cream parchment visible through the doorway of Harry's bedroom. He closed it again. Upstairs, he said. Harry went, no shouting, no punishment, no cupboard. The first inspection had lasted 43 minutes. Its effect continued for 19 days. Harry recorded each change, meals, same portion as Dudley except dessert. Aunt Petunia checks whether I eat. Uncle Vernon does not lock bedroom. Dudley enters only when adults out. Contact parchment. Vernon looks at IT before speaking. Petunia dusts around IT but does not touch. Dudley afraid of IT. Harry did not write that he was grateful. The ledger recorded what happened. Not what he wished the changes meant. Letters arrived from Ron and Hermione. Ron wrote quickly and irregularly. His pages contained descriptions of a ghoul in the attic, arguments between his brothers, and repeated invitations to visit. Hermione's letters were longer. She had created a reading list for second year and crossed out 4 books after admitting she had selected too many. She asked about Harry's home, though each question included a separate line stating he did not have to answer. Theodore wrote only once. The envelope arrived sealed with plain wax. No family crest, no return address. Harry opened it at his desk. The message contained 6 lines. My father knows Professor Snape intercepted the letters. He has not mentioned the stone. He asks about you instead. I have said very little. This made him ask more. Do not reply by owl. Harry read it twice. Then he placed it inside the ledger. He did not reply. The instruction was clear. 3 weeks later, Professor McGonagall returned. The second inspection lasted 28 minutes. On the final day of July, Harry woke before sunrise. 11 had changed everything. 12 began quietly. No giant arrived. No door broke. At breakfast, Aunt Petunia placed toast on the table, 4 plates. Harry looked at them. She noticed, "Sit down before it gets cold." The words were not warm. They were still an invitation to occupy a chair. Harry sat. Dudley stared at the 4th plate with the betrayed expression of someone discovering arithmetic had been revised against him. Uncle Vernon unfolded the newspaper. No one said happy birthday. Harry had not expected them to. Halfway through breakfast, Aunt Petunia placed a small paper-wrapped object beside Harry's plate. Dudley dropped his fork. Harry looked at the package. "What is it?" Aunt Petunia's face sharpened. "You could open it." Harry removed the paper carefully. Inside was a new pencil, ordinary, yellow. Sharpened, not borrowed, not discarded, not enchanted. Harry turned it once between his fingers. "Thank you." Aunt Petunia stood and carried her plate to the sink, though she had not finished eating. Uncle Vernon disappeared behind the newspaper. Dudley protested for the next 20 minutes because he had not received anything. Harry took the pencil upstairs. He used it for the ledger, July 31. Aunt Petunia gave pencil possible reason. Inspection, he stopped. The pencil rested in his hand. The explanation was plausible. It was not proven. Harry crossed out the line and wrote, reason unknown. That evening he received no letters. Ron had said he would write. Hermione had asked whether magical post arrived on birthdays. Hagrid knew the date. The absence was noticeable, not alarming. Owls were not trains. They did not follow exact timetables. Harry waited. At 10:31, something struck the window. He rose. Nothing was outside. The garden lay dark beneath the glass. At 10:32, the sound came again, not from the window, from the wardrobe. Harry took out his wand. He did not point it. The ministry forbade underage magic, but holding a wand was not spellcasting. The wardrobe door stood slightly open. Harry had closed it after putting away his clothes. He knew because the right door required pressure at the bottom to catch properly. Harry approached from the side. "Who's there?" Something breathed inside, small, fast. Harry positioned himself beside the desk. The cream parchment lay within reach. "If you are a person," he said, "come out slowly." The wardrobe door opened. A creature stepped into the room. It stood approximately 3 feet tall. Its eyes were enormous and green. Long ears extended from either side of a narrow head. Its clothing consisted of something resembling a pillowcase. Harry recognized the general description from Theodore's explanation at the first feast. House elf. The creature stared at him, then bowed so low that its nose struck the carpet. Harry Potter. Harry tightened his grip on the wand. The elf's voice was high and trembling. "Dobby has wanted to meet Harry Potter for so long. You know my name. Every house elf knows Harry Potter's name." Harry glanced at the wardrobe. "Did you come through there?" "Dobby cannot say." "Cannot or will not?" The elf's ears drooped. "Dobby cannot say." Harry stored the distinction. The Dursleys were downstairs. Uncle Vernon was watching television. Aunt Petunia was in the kitchen. Dudley was eating something he had been told not to eat. Harry could contact McGonagall. He did not yet know whether this was an emergency. "Why are you here?" Dobby twisted his hands to warn Harry Potter. The words were followed by a sharp movement. The elf seized the pencil from Harry's desk and struck his own head with it. Harry caught his wrist on the second blow. Dobby froze. "Let go, sir." "No, Dobby must punish himself." "Why?" "For speaking badly of his family." "You didn't mention them." Dobby's eyes filled with tears. Dobby thought of mentioning them. Harry loosened his grip but did not release the wrist. "Does thinking count?" "For Dobby, sir." Harry looked at the pillowcase, at the thin arms, at the automatic way the creature turned punishment inward before anyone commanded it. Theodore folded clothes for inspection after leaving home. Dobby struck himself for thoughts. "Different house, same rule. Who owns you?" Harry asked. Dobby slammed his free hand over his mouth. His entire body shook. Harry changed the question. "Is it a wizarding family?" Dobby nodded. "An old family?" Another nod. "Do they know you are here?" Dobby shook his head so violently that his ears struck his shoulders. Harry released the wrist. Dobby raised the pencil again. Harry took it away. "No," Dobby stared. "You don't have permission to order Dobby." "I'm not ordering." But Harry Potter said no. "I'm telling you what I want." The elf looked confused. Harry placed the pencil behind him. "What are you warning me about?" Dobby's eyes widened. "Harry Potter must not return to Hogwarts." Harry waited. Dobby appeared to expect shock. "Why?" "Terrible things are going to happen." "What things?" Dobby cannot say. "Who will make them happen?" Dobby's head jerked toward the desk. He looked ready to strike it. Harry stepped between them. "Do not answer that." Dobby stopped. "You knew the question would hurt you?" "Yes, sir." "Then don't answer questions you cannot answer safely." Dobby stared at him as though Harry had spoken in a language house elves did not use. "Can you tell me when?" "At Hogwarts." "That is where, not when." Dobby wrung his hands. "This school year, before Christmas?" Dobby shook his head, then nodded, then seized one ear in distress. Harry stopped. The restrictions were not simple. Some questions caused punishment because they approached a protected fact. Others confused the elf because the answer was not fixed. Harry opened the ledger. Dobby's eyes grew even larger. "Harry Potter writes things down?" "Yes." Dobby should have known. "Why?" The elf clapped both hands over his mouth. Harry waited until the shaking eased. "Can you tell me how you know I write things down?" "No, sir." "Did someone tell your family?" Dobby began moving toward the wardrobe. Harry closed the ledger. "You can leave if you need to." Dobby stopped. "Harry Potter is not keeping Dobby." "No." "Harry Potter could call his family." "I don't know who they are." "Harry Potter is clever." "Not enough." The elf gave a small, miserable laugh. "Too clever for Dobby's warning." "I haven't refused." Hope appeared so quickly on Dobby's face that Harry regretted the wording. "I'm listening." Dobby's expression fell again. "You will still go." "Yes." The elf made a broken sound. Harry continued before he could hurt himself. "Hogwarts has professors. There is contact parchment. Professor McGonagall promised inspections. Professor Snape knows about my mental defense. If something dangerous is going to happen, I need enough information to warn them. Professors cannot stop it." "Why?" Dobby looked at the wardrobe. Harry corrected himself. "Can you say whether the danger is stronger than Dumbledore?" The elf shook his head. "No." "Then why can't professors stop it?" "Because they will not know. I can tell them." "They will not believe Dobby." "Will they believe me?" Dobby looked at Harry's scar. "Some will." "Then help me give them something verifiable." The elf began crying silently. Tears ran down his narrow face and soaked the pillowcase. Dobby hoped Harry Potter would be proud. Of what? Of being protected. Harry thought of Dumbledore saying Privet Drive had been safe from one danger. Not safe. Protection without explanation is difficult to trust. Dobby twisted the pillowcase. Harry Potter speaks like a grown wizard. "No," the answer came immediately. "Grown wizards explain less." Dobby looked at him. Harry opened the ledger again. "I will ask questions. You can refuse. You can leave. You do not have to punish yourself." "Dobby does." "Who says?" "Dobby's magic." That answer mattered. The punishment was not habit alone. It was enforced, perhaps by magical bonds. Harry wrote, "House elf, bound to family. Restrictions affect speech and self-punishment." Then he stopped. "May I write about you?" Dobby stared. No wizard has asked Dobby that. That doesn't answer. Yes, Dobby whispered. Harry Potter may write. Harry added the name Dobby. What kind of danger? He asked. Creature. Dobby did not react. Object. One ear twitched. Harry saw it. Dobby realized he had seen it and struck himself in the nose before Harry could stop him. Object, Harry said. Dobby wailed. Harry closed the book. No more questions. But Harry Potter must know. I know enough for tonight. No, sir, not enough. Dobby paced. His bare feet made almost no sound. History will repeat itself, he whispered. Harry watched him. What history? Dobby began tugging at his ears. Harry did not ask again. Something happened at Hogwarts before. The elf froze. That is an answerable question, Harry said. Dobby nodded once. How long ago? The elf looked toward the door. Before Harry Potter. That covers most of history. Dobby made a sound that might have been a laugh. Then his face crumpled. Dobby cannot tell. Harry wrote nothing, an object, something that had caused danger at Hogwarts before. Professors would not know. An old wizarding family was involved. The elf knew Harry recorded people. That suggested the family had access to information about him. Theodore's father had asked questions. Draco's father possessed influence. Many old families might fit, not enough information. Did you stop my letters? Dobby went perfectly still. Harry's grip on the ledger tightened. Ron and Hermione wrote. Dobby's eyes filled with guilt. That was enough. Where are they? The elf snapped his fingers. A bundle of envelopes appeared in his hands, more than Harry expected. 3 from Ron, 4 from Hermione. 2 from Hagrid. 1 from someone whose handwriting he did not recognize, Theodore. Dobby held them against his chest. Dobby thought Harry Potter would believe his friends had forgotten. Harry felt anger arrive. The cupboard room opened. He placed the anger outside, but it pushed back. You wanted me isolated. Dobby wanted Harry Potter to feel he had no reason to return. You used the same thing you are warning me against. Dobby looked stricken. What? Being alone because someone else decided it was safer. Dobby's ears lowered. Dobby did it for Harry Potter? So did Dumbledore. The elf did not understand. Harry did. Protection could become another form of control when the protected person was denied information and choice. Give me the letters. Dobby clutched them tighter. If Harry Potter promises not to return. No. Then Dobby cannot. Harry rose. The elf backed toward the wardrobe. Harry did not draw his wand. He had no spell that could reliably stop magical transportation. Even if he did, using it would alert the Ministry and possibly harm Dobby. Those letters belong to me. Dobby knows. You took them. Yes, sir. Will your magic punish you for theft? Dobby's eyes widened. A tremor passed through him. No, he whispered. Harry understood something about the elf's masters. The bond punished disloyal speech, not immoral action. Dobby could steal from Harry if he believed it served the family's interest or perhaps his own plan. The magic cared about obedience, not goodness. Keep them for tonight, Harry said. Dobby blinked. The anger remained outside the cupboard room, striking the walls. Harry counted. 1, 2, 3. I will write to McGonagall on the contact parchment. I'll tell her my post has been intercepted by a house elf connected to an old family. I'll tell her an object may be used to repeat an earlier attack at Hogwarts. Dobby began shaking. She'll investigate. No, she may find your family. No, 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 you can return the letters and leave before I write. Dobby looked at the bundle. Harry felt no satisfaction. This was leverage. Slytherin understood leverage. That did not make it kind. But unlike Dobby's masters, Harry had offered a choice. Dobby's fingers loosened. Then the floorboard outside the bedroom creaked. Uncle Vernon. 4 steps from the landing, 3 to Harry's door. Dobby heard him. The elf snapped his fingers. The letters vanished. Harry reached for the contact parchment. Dobby snapped again. The cream sheet flew from the desk. Harry caught one corner. The silver border burned cold against his fingers. Dobby pulled through magic rather than strength. The parchment tore. A sound like a bell rang somewhere far away. The destruction warning. Professor McGonagall would know. Dobby released it. Half the parchment remained in Harry's hand. The other half disappeared. Uncle Vernon opened the bedroom door. He saw Harry standing beside the desk. He saw the house elf. He saw the torn, enchanted parchment floating between them. For 2 full seconds, nobody spoke. Then Dobby vanished. The remaining letters appeared above the bed, not stacked, open. Every envelope unfolded at once. Pages filled the air. Uncle Vernon ducked as Hermione's description of her trip to France struck his forehead. Ron's drawing of a ghoul landed on his shoulder. Hagrid's note fell into the lamp. Harry caught it before it burned. Theodore's envelope slid beneath the wardrobe. The magical displacement made the lamp flicker downstairs. Dishes began rattling. Aunt Petunia shouted. Uncle Vernon's face turned purple. "What," he whispered, "was that?" Harry looked at the torn parchment. The bell had sounded. McGonagall knew it was damaged. A house elf, in my house. "Yes, you brought it here." "No, your freakish friend sent it." "No." The familiar volume began rising. Harry's body adjusted. 1 step to the desk, wand in wardrobe, parchment damaged, window accessible. Door blocked by Uncle Vernon. Then Harry stopped, counting exits. The parchment had triggered. Someone knew. It was warning me about Hogwarts. Uncle Vernon froze. The anger reorganized. Harry saw it happen. A school danger was useful. "You're not going back. That isn't your decision. I am your guardian." "And you signed a document." Uncle Vernon's fist struck the doorframe. "You will not threaten me in my own." A sharp crack sounded from downstairs, not apparition. The front door. The bell rang once. Aunt Petunia called up. "Vernon," her voice was thin. Uncle Vernon looked toward the landing. Footsteps entered the hall, measured, hard-soled. Professor McGonagall had not arrived. Professor Snape appeared at the bottom of the stairs. He wore black robes despite the summer heat. His expression suggested the entire street had personally disappointed him. Uncle Vernon stepped backward. Snape looked up. His eyes found Harry, then the torn parchment. "Explain." Harry collected the letters before answering. He began with verifiable facts. A house elf named Dobby had entered through the wardrobe. Dobby served an old wizarding family. He had intercepted Harry's post. He warned that an object would cause something from Hogwarts, past to repeat during the coming year. He believed professors would not recognize the danger in time. He had prevented Harry from naming or identifying the family through magical restrictions. Snape listened without interruption. Aunt Petunia remained downstairs. Dudley watched through a gap in his bedroom door. Uncle Vernon stood pressed against the wall, making himself smaller than Harry had ever seen him. When Harry finished, Snape held out his hand. The letters. Harry gave them to him. Snape examined the envelopes. He did not open them. His thumb stopped on Theodore's plain seal. "Mr. Knott." "Yes." "You were instructed not to reply." "Yes." Snape looked at him. Harry realized he should not have known what Theodore's letter said without opening it. Snape handed it back. "Read it." Harry did. The second message was shorter than the first. "My father has acquired something from Borgin and Burke's. He called it a school matter. I heard him say Malfoy arranged the sale. Do not tell Draco yet." There was no signature. Harry gave the letter to Snape. The professor read it once. His face did not change. That was the change. Every trace of irritation disappeared. "What is Borgin and Burke's?" Harry asked. "A shop." "What kind?" "The kind children are advised not to enter." "Dark objects." Snape's eyes sharpened. "Yes." "Does Lucius Malfoy own a house elf?" Silence. Uncle Vernon looked between them without understanding. Snape folded the letter. "You will not make accusations based on association." "Does he?" "Yes." Harry thought of Dobby's clothes, of Draco in Madame Malkin's shop, of the Malfoy name opening conversations, of Theodore's father working through fear. Lucius Malfoy arranged the sale, something intended for the school. Dobby knew Harry's habits. Draco had described Harry's ledger at home, perhaps casually, enough pieces aligned to be dangerous, not enough to prove anything. Snape turned toward the wardrobe. "Where did the elf appear?" "Inside." "Did he touch anything?" "The pencil, the parchment, the letters." Snape moved his wand. A pale line of light traveled across the room. It gathered around the wardrobe handle, the desk, and the torn edge of the parchment. Threads of green-gold residue rose into the air. House elf magic. Snape captured them inside a glass vial. Adult magic transformed traces Harry could only observe into evidence another adult might use. Harry watched carefully. Can you identify the family from that? No. Can Dumbledore? No. Then what does it prove? That you did not invent the visitor. Uncle Vernon made a strangled noise. Snape turned toward him. The inspection agreement has been breached. I didn't summon the creature. You attempted to prohibit Potter's return to school. That school is dangerous. Snape's mouth curved without humor. On that point we agree. Harry looked at him. Snape continued. The agreement did not allow you to make the determination. He is a child. Yes, Snape said, a fact your household previously found convenient to forget. Uncle Vernon went silent. Snape placed the repaired portion of contact parchment on Harry's desk. With one movement of his wand, the torn edges joined. The silver border remained dark. Will it still work? Harry asked. No, a replacement will be delivered tomorrow. Can Dobby intercept it? Not if it is keyed to your wand. Why wasn't the first one? Snape looked toward the stairs. Because Professor McGonagall chose not to introduce underage wand binding into a Muggle household. That was cautious. Yes, it failed. Yes, Snape admitted institutional failure as though it were an ingredient measured incorrectly. No excuse. Correction required. The new parchment will also alert the school if removed from the property, he said. Harry nodded. What happens now? Professor Dumbledore will be informed. Will he investigate Lucius Malfoy? Snape's eyes became cold. He will investigate the possibility that an object connected to a prior incident may enter Hogwarts. That isn't the same. No, why not? Because accusing Lucius Malfoy without evidence would warn him. Harry understood. Observation first, action later. The method was familiar. Snape handed Theodore's letter back. You will keep this. Why? Because I am not in the habit of carrying another student's private correspondence. You read my ledger. Relevant pages. You keep saying that, and you continue surviving occasions when you should not. Snape moved toward the door. At the landing he stopped. Potter, Harry waited. Pack your school materials. Uncle Vernon's face brightened. You're taking him? No, Snape said. The brightness died. The house elf may return. Until his purpose is better understood, Potter will remain under observation. By whom? Harry asked. Snape looked as though the answer offended him personally. Mrs. Figg. Harry stared. The woman with the cats. Her cats are irrelevant. That sounded unlikely. Is she a witch? No. Then why? Tomorrow. Snape descended the stairs. The front door closed moments later. Uncle Vernon looked at Harry. Harry looked at the repaired but powerless parchment. The household rules hovered between old and new. Uncle Vernon could shout. He could threaten. He could attempt punishment. But Snape had appeared less than 10 minutes after the alarm. The school had come, not quickly enough to stop Dobby, quickly enough to leave evidence. Uncle Vernon turned away. No more creatures in the wardrobe. I did not invite him. I don't care. That doesn't change the cause. Uncle Vernon's shoulders rose, then fell. Clean this room. He went downstairs. Harry collected the letters. He placed Ron's in one pile, Hermione's in another, Hagrid's beside them. Theodore's latest message went inside the ledger. At the bottom of a fresh page, Harry wrote, Dobby serves old family, likely Malfoy, not proven, intercepted letters to isolate me. Warned of object connected to earlier event at Hogwarts. Believes professors will not identify danger. Magic punishes disloyal speech, not harmful action. Harry paused. Then added, wanted to protect me. Method made me easier to control. He looked toward the wardrobe. The door stood open. Nothing waited inside. Harry closed it carefully. On the desk lay Aunt Petunia's pencil. Dobby had used it against himself. The point had broken. Harry sharpened it again. He turned to the oldest section of the ledger and found the rule he had crossed out at the end of first year. No one is coming. The line remained visible beneath the mark. Below it was the replacement. People cannot come if they do not know where to go. Harry added a third sentence. Sometimes the warning is part of the trap. Outside, something landed on the windowsill. Harry looked up. A large gray owl waited beyond the glass. A ministry envelope was tied to its leg. Harry opened the window. The owl extended 1 foot. The letter accused him of performing a hover charm at 12 minutes past 10. Harry read it twice. Dobby had used magic. The Ministry had blamed Harry. An institution with enough power to detect a spell inside his bedroom had not detected who cast it. Harry looked at the wardrobe, at the warning letter, at Theodore's message. At the place where Dobby had stood, the object had not yet entered Hogwarts. The danger had not yet begun. And already the wrong person had been blamed. Harry opened the ledger again. This time he wrote only one line. Second-year pattern, the system sees magic. IT does not always see the wizard. Thanks for watching, guys.